The harsh wind that swept across the courtyard of the Red Keep carried the tang of salt from Blackwater Bay, and the sky stretched out in a deep, rich shade of twilight blue. Even at dusk, King's Landing refused to relinquish its bustle. The laughter of drunkards, the whistles of faraway traders, and the shuffle of the ever-restless gold cloaks formed a curious melody that eddied around the tall ramparts. Within the castle walls, Lord Eddard Stark stood by a window overlooking the bay, his gray eyes solemn and keen. Here, in the fading light, he was cloaked not just in the House Stark colors of gray and white, but in the burden of a secret he had unearthed, a secret that threatened to topple kings and start a war that would set the Seven Kingdoms aflame. He was not a fool, though honest to a fault. Ned Stark had a warrior's instincts sharpened by years of experience in war and in peace. His sense of honor often made him stand out like a bright star in the morally murky sky of courtly intrigue, but tonight, honor alone was not enough. The stakes were too high, and duty demanded cunning. He remembered well the words that had once been whispered in the crypts of Winterfell: "Winter is coming." A foreboding that did not simply speak of the weather, but of all the darkness that could descend upon the realm. He had uncovered the truth of Queen Cersei's children, that knowledge festered in his mind, a quiet storm urging him to act. Normally, Ned would face such a discovery by confronting King Robert directly. But the king was away hunting, oblivious to the viper's nest that brewed inside his court. And as time spiraled forward, Ned realized that once Robert returned, events could easily slip out of his hands if he was not careful. Yet the moment he began to consider how to move, one of the last men he expected to see in these corridors of power presented himself, Lord Varys, the Master of Whisperers. When Varys approached him, it was with characteristic silence, arriving so smoothly that Ned had not heard the man's footfalls. One moment Ned stood alone, the next, the eunuch was beside him, hands folded in front of him as though in prayer. Varys wore the same softly colored robes he usually did, never threatening, never ostentatious, always exuding an air of genteel courtesy. Rumors abounded that he had birds everywhere, that he was a spider weaving webs through the entire city. Ned had given little credence to such talk at first. Spies and rumors were commonplace in King's Landing. And yet Varys's knowledge proved uncanny. The Master of Whisperers seemed to know everything before it even happened. He had already hinted to Ned, in private, that the truth about Joffrey, Myrcella, and Tommen was known to him as well. Most men might have considered that knowledge blackmail or a tool to exploit for personal gain. But if Varys meant to blackmail Ned, he had chosen a peculiar manner of doing so, offering warnings and advice that had so far been surprisingly neutral. "My Lord Hand," Varys had greeted him softly that evening, "the hour grows late and the city sleeps far less than it used to. Tension stirs in every corner. I wonder if you have felt it too." Ned did not jump at the man's sudden presence, though his pulse quickened. He was no coward, but the Master of Whisperers had a habit of popping up like a ghost. "I feel it," Ned admitted. "I see it in the gold cloaks standing uneasily outside the Red Keep, in the glances shared among the lords on the small council, in the eyes of the courtiers. There is a readiness for violence, as though the city braces for a storm. I fear it will come soon." Varys tilted his head in silent agreement. Torchlight from the hallway cast flickering shadows across his face, giving him a concerned, almost sorrowful countenance. "A storm indeed. My little birds have been chirping a good deal, my lord. They tell me many things, troubling things about men's allegiances and the secrets whispered behind closed doors. And of course, they sing songs of Peter Baelish. He is a sly one, Lord Baelish, far slyer than most men will ever believe." Ned regarded Varys in stoic silence for a moment. Peter Baelish, known to many simply as Littlefinger, had played a significant role in Ned's life. He was once a ward at Riverrun, fostered alongside Ned's wife, Catelyn, and her siblings. Baelish had once challenged Ned's brother Brandon for Catelyn's hand, an act that Ned found both foolish and strangely impressive in its audacity. Yet now, as Master of Coin, Lord Baelish had become a man of influence. No one could deny his cunning. Many believed him to be the root of whispered rumors, slow poison dripped into the ears of powerful men and women. He had said he was a friend to Ned, but Ned's instincts told him otherwise. There was a glint in Littlefinger's eyes that always unsettled him, something glimmering behind that perpetually mocking smile. "Yes," Ned finally said. "He is cunning. And in King's Landing, cunning is worth more than armies." A small, regretful smile formed on Varys's lips. "He has been weaving a tapestry of schemes that may ensnare us all if we do not tread carefully. My Lord Hand, I suspect you have uncovered a most dangerous secret, one that, if revealed improperly, might lead to bloodshed and chaos that would only serve to strengthen Peter's position. He is a gambler who thrives on discord, and should the realm split itself asunder, I fear he will grow richer in every sense. I believe we can no longer allow him to slither freely. And so I must ask, what if we joined our efforts just for a short while to rid the realm of a man who has grown too fond of playing the game? Ned's brow furrowed. He was not accustomed to forging alliances with men whose loyalties he questioned. Yet Varys stood here, an enigma, offering assistance not couched in pleas for money or future favors. Ned was wise enough to be suspicious, but he also recognized that the same cunning that made him wary of Varys could be an advantage in rooting out Littlefinger. You are asking me to trust you, Ned said, measuring his words carefully. Even though I hardly know you. I do not ask for total trust, Varys replied. Only for an opportunity to prove that we both share a common interest in preserving the realm. For all your misgivings about me, and I understand them, be assured that I have misgivings about Littlefinger that are equally strong, perhaps stronger. King's Landing is a sea of illusions, my lord, but there are times when illusions must be dispelled for the sake of something greater. Their eyes met, and Ned tried to discern the truth in Varys's watery stare. In any other circumstance, Ned would go to Robert with his evidence, let justice reign, and let heads roll if need be. But King Robert was off hunting boars, pursuing mindless pleasures. By the time he returned, who knew what might happen? Baelish might twist events, or throw blame on Ned, or worse. And with each passing day, Joffrey grew closer to the throne. The slightest misstep, and the entire realm might fall into war. Ned realized, with a hint of reluctance, that he needed an ally who understood the labyrinth of King's Landing far better than he. I will hear what you have to say, Ned stated, voice steady. But do not mistake my willingness to listen for weakness. If you betray me, I will see to it that justice is done. Varys placed a hand on his heart in a dramatic gesture, but his expression remained grave. As you should, my lord, though I have no intention of betraying you or the realm. In that moment, a fragile alliance was born. They spoke quietly, exchanging words of caution and small bits of information. Ned revealed that he suspected Littlefinger of orchestrating false leads around the parentage of Robert's children, stoking conspiracies, and possibly planning a larger betrayal. Meanwhile, Varys disclosed that Littlefinger had been quietly shoring up alliances with a few unscrupulous knights and corrupt gold cloaks. The Master of Coin had also been sending letters to unknown parties, utilizing coded language that even Varys's best decipherers struggled to interpret, but the bits that were understood suggested the seed of a grand betrayal. Within the hour, they had formed an agreement that neither quite trusted but each recognized was necessary. Together, they would gather incontrovertible proof of Littlefinger's treachery. Then, in a single strike, they would expose his webs of lies before the entirety of the small council, maybe even before the king, if time allowed. Their plan was precarious, but, if executed right, it would avert the coming war, or at least prevent Peter Baelish from lighting the spark that ignited it. Ned returned to his chambers, his mind churning. He had told Arya and Sansa in as gentle a manner as he could that these times were growing dangerous. He reminded them to stay within the keep, to be wary of strangers, and to obey him without question. Sansa had sighed, dreaming of chivalry, still enamored with ideas of handsome princes and gallant knights. Arya, with her wolf's blood, had merely scowled, as though each restriction chafed at her fiercely independent spirit. But Ned was unyielding in this. He would not lose another child to the cruelty of the South. When he was done, he dismissed them to their own rooms, their faces etched with the stress of youthful confusion. He prayed that one day they would understand why he did what he had to do. Wordlessly, he dressed for bed, though his mind would not let him rest. Outside the narrow windows, the moon had risen, a pale pearl overhead. Soft footsteps in the hallway signaled that at least a few gold cloaks passed by. As Ned lay down, his thoughts circled back to the face of Varys. He wondered whether the eunuch was truly the lesser of two evils, or if by forging this alliance he was simply walking into another trap. Yet the memory of Peter Baelish's smug smile firmed his resolve. The man was too cunning, too unpredictable. Varys, for all his secrecy, had so far shown no interest in personal advancement. Ned would take that as a slender thread of hope. But he was no fool, he would keep a watchful eye. Dawn arrived with a haze of golden sunlight filtering through the high windows of the Tower of the Hand. The small birds of the city chirped along the rafters, and a clamor rose from the main yard, guards rotating shifts, servants preparing for a new day, the kitchens alive with the smell of fresh bread and sizzling meats. Ned dressed in simple attire, the customary stark gray, and strapped on his sword belt. Though he wore the title of Hand of the King, he had never been a man for ostentatious display. Simplicity matched his nature, and within the corruption of King's Landing, he hoped it would help him stand apart in the eyes of those he needed to trust him. Or at least, not fear him. He broke his fast with a cup of watered wine and a warm loaf. As he ate, a courier delivered a summons from Grand Maester Pycelle requesting his presence for a matter pertaining to the finances of the city. Ned raised an eyebrow. Finances? That was more under the purview of the Master of Coin, but perhaps Pycelle was speaking at the behest of the small council. The notes from the old man were always flowery and circular, as though he enjoyed the sound of his own words. Ned remembered that Varys had cautioned him about Pycelle as well, that the Grand Maester was possibly an informant for the Queen. Ned rolled up the parchment. If Pycelle wished to meet, then so be it. If nothing else, it provided an excuse to observe the old man and glean whether there was any connection to Baelish in this unexpected summons. Outside, the day was warm, stifling under layers of clothes. As Ned made his way to Pycelle's solar, the corridors seemed narrower somehow, as if the stone walls themselves bore down on him in silent judgment. He arrived to find the Grand Maester slouching in his chair, scribbling on a parchment. The old man rose slowly, his maester's chains clinking softly. "Ah, Lord Hand," Pycelle greeted, wrinkled face forming a polite smile. "Thank you for attending me on such short notice. The matters of coin have grown so pressing that I fear my old heart can hardly take it. With Lord Baelish occupied, there are some issues we must address if the king is to continue his grand tourneys and celebrations." Ned studied Pycelle's features. The old man had a habit of feigning more feebleness than he possessed, if rumors were to be believed. "Of course," Ned answered, "but I wonder, why not address them to the Master of Coin directly?" Pycelle let out a soft sigh, as though the weight of the world rested on his stooped shoulders. "I have, my lord, but Lord Baelish has been quite unavailable these past few days. He claims to be in negotiations with certain bankers from Bravos, but I suspect there is more to it. Our debts, as you must be aware, are piling higher than the city's walls." He paused, tenting his fingers. "My ravens also bring word that some shipments from the Reach have gone missing. Grain mostly. Now, this matter is tangential to the finances, of course, but one must wonder if unscrupulous men have begun to see the crown's vulnerability." Ned took note of the comment. Missing shipments of grain would be a concern for the city's food supply, especially if times of war or famine loomed. King's Landing, with its swelling population, relied heavily on imports from the fertile farmlands of the Reach. If someone was sabotaging these shipments, it could sow discord or starve the city's inhabitants. "I will speak to Lord Baelish about this once he returns," Ned said. "In the meantime, are there any immediate steps we can take? I've written letters to the lords responsible for shipping. Lord Redwine is supposed to help facilitate the transport, but he claims no knowledge of sabotage." "It's all very confusing," Pycelle said, fussing with a quill. Then he leaned forward, and his wrinkled features took on a conspiratorial air. "Forgive me, my lord, but some say that you've grown distracted. They say you are investigating matters that do not concern the realm. I would advise you gently to be mindful. Lord Baelish is beloved by some, and our good Queen Cersei would not appreciate any unnecessary disruptions." Ned forced himself to maintain a calm demeanor, though his blood stirred at the mention of the Queen's name. "I appreciate your concern, Grand Maester. My only goal is to serve the king and the realm." Pycelle smiled in an avuncular way. Of course. That is always your aim, I'm sure. But times are precarious. The king is away hunting, and in his absence, the city grows restless. Small matters can become large conspiracies if we are not vigilant. Beware, Lord Stark, of placing too much faith in the wrong men. Even I have heard rumors that new alliances bloom in secret corners. Ned recognized the underlying message. Pycelle was warning him, in the gentlest possible terms, that meddling in certain affairs could prove dangerous. He could not be sure if Pycelle was referencing Varys or if the old man was simply trying to glean how much Ned knew. After a few more pleasantries, Ned excused himself. He walked out of Pycelle's solar feeling as though he had waded through a bog of half-truths. On the face of it, Pycelle was concerned about the city's grain supply. Beneath that veneer, however, lurked deeper anxieties about Ned's investigations. Anxieties that likely tied back to the Queen and, possibly, to Littlefinger. He left the Red Keep's interior corridors and stepped onto a walkway overlooking the expansive gardens, letting his mind wander as he found himself drawn to the courtyard. The day was bright, and the creeping vines across the stone walls glistened in the light. He could smell the blossoms from the roses near the fountain, a fragrance that contrasted sharply with the sinister suspicions swirling in his thoughts. At the far end of the courtyard, he saw a slight figure in richly patterned robes moving gracefully among the columns, seemingly admiring the flowers. Varys, as though summoned by the invisible pull of secrets, the master of whisperers appeared. Ned walked over to him with purposeful strides. "Lord Varys," Ned said by way of greeting, glancing around to ensure they were relatively alone. "You said you would uncover more about Littlefinger's dealings. Have you found anything?" Varys inclined his head, as if they were discussing mere trifles. "Some tidbits, my Lord Hand. Baelish has made contact with several members of the City Watch, and in each instance, he has given them generous coin or promises of future advancement. In private, he has also boasted of forging alliances with powerful lords who might be enticed by opportunities. Yet who these lords are, my birds cannot yet say. Their names are kept secret, only to be revealed if Littlefinger decides the time is ripe." Ned's jaw tightened. "Do you think these men could be turned to our side? Or at least away from Baelish?" "Possibly, but only if we act quickly," Varys replied. "Baelish's greatest strength is in making men believe they need him. He might promise them riches, the satisfaction of old grudges, or the sweet taste of revenge. He fans the flames of ambition in those who have it, and fear in those who do not." Ned paused, his gaze on the swirl of a rose petal drifting across the courtyard stones. "We must act carefully," he said at last. "We cannot simply accuse him without proof. We need something undeniable, something that exposes him beyond all doubt. Otherwise, I fear the Queen or the small council might side with him if it means preserving their own interests." Varys touched a blossom as though it were the most delicate thing in the world. "I understand, my lord. Perhaps I can locate a witness or incriminating documents. One of Baelish's scribes is known to have a weakness for gambling. If I can find him and encourage him to speak, perhaps that will lead us to more tangible evidence." Ned nodded. "Do so, and let me know as soon as you have anything concrete." He hesitated, then added, "Be mindful that we do not alert Baelish to our plans. If he senses we're closing in, he will vanish like a wisp of smoke and reappear somewhere else, weaving fresh webs." "Discretion is my specialty," Varys said with a soft smile. "I will see to it." As the eunuch strolled away, Ned felt a strange mixture of resolve and caution. Teaming up with Varys was like stepping onto a slender bridge that spanned a gaping chasm. Each footfall had to be certain or all would be lost. Still, he reminded himself that to do nothing would be worse. It would allow Littlefinger more time to spread his poison. Ned remembered the oath he had sworn to serve as Hand of the King, to protect the realm from threats both within and without. He thought of Catelyn, of Robb, Sansa, Arya, Bran, and Rickon so far away in the north. He thought of the people he had left behind to come here, trusting that he would preserve the peace. He would not fail them. The day drifted on. Ned found himself preoccupied with official duties, signing documents, hearing minor petitions, ensuring the day-to-day operation of King's Landing continued without Robert's direct involvement. Every now and then he caught glimpses of courtiers whispering in dark corners, watching him with sidelong glances that made his skin crawl. He wondered how many rumors were being spun about him. Some would claim he was the reason the realm was teetering on the edge of debt. Others would whisper that he was preparing to oust the Lannisters or declare the North's independence. Lies spread quickly in King's Landing, a city that fed on gossip the way a starving wolf tears into fresh meat. By late afternoon, Ned decided to visit the Godwood, an oasis of quiet in a city brimming with noise. The Red Keep's Godwood was smaller than Winterfell's, lacking a heart tree with a solemn face carved into it, but there was still greenery, still a sense of calm beneath the branches. Ned knelt by the reflection pool, letting the tension in his shoulders ease as he prayed in the old way, or at least tried to. He found his mind drifting to the secrets swirling around him, the parentage of the royal children, Baelish's schemes, Robert's likely reaction if the truth ever reached his ears. The notion of Robert's fury conjured memories of the rebellion, of the brutal wars that had ravaged the realm. If Robert discovered that Cersei's children were not his own, the king would thunder, swords would be drawn, and the blood of the Lannisters might flow through the streets. Ned wanted justice, but he did not wish to see the realm plunged into chaos. The next morning, as planned, Ned and Varys met in a discreet chamber near the library. A single candle flickered between them, illuminating parchments that Varys produced. These were not the coded letters that Baelish himself had sent, but correspondences from men whose names had been blacked out, exchanges that hinted strongly at a plot to undermine certain families, sow conflict in the Riverlands, perhaps even orchestrate an incident that could spark open war. Varys explained that these letters were discovered through indirect channels, courtesy of one of his less-known spies who claimed they had been in a trunk shipped under Baelish's instructions. Ned pored over the words. Though some lines were too vague to decipher, phrases like, "We have secured the watch," and "funds needed for the next phase" jumped out at him. The signatory was a mere pseudonym, Valido. But Varys suspected that name belonged to one of Baelish's key conspirators. "If we can confirm that these letters indeed passed under Baelish's authority," Ned began, "then we have cause to question him." But question him where? In front of the small council, or in the king's presence upon his return? Varys frowned and thought, if we drag Baelish before the council without indisputable proof, he will wriggle out of the charges, weaving half-truths and turning the blame on others. He could claim these letters are forgeries or that they implicate an entirely different affair. He might even say that you are the one forging the evidence to rid yourself of a potential rival. Then we need stronger proof, Ned said. Proof that is damning. And to get that, we need someone from his own circle who can name names and swear to it. You mentioned a scribe. Varys nodded. He has a scribe named Oren, a man with a taste for drink and dice. If we can put enough pressure on him or offer him a deal sweet enough, he may talk. I do not doubt that Baelish has used him to draft or copy letters he dares not entrust to other scribes. Ned drummed his fingers on the table. Find him. Bring him to me. If he is willing to speak, I will ensure he receives protection. If he is not, well, I will find ways to persuade him. But we must do this quietly. Baelish must not know. The conversation ended with Ned feeling a renewed sense of purpose, yet also an encroaching sense of danger. He was playing a game that he had never wanted to play, a game of shadows and whispers that men like Baelish, Varys, and the Queen excelled in. After the meeting, Ned walked the corridors with measured steps, nodding absently to various courtiers who passed him by. Everything around him felt like a stage, with players reciting lines meant to deceive or distract. He longed for the honest cold of the north, where a man's word was his bond and where illusions were quickly shredded by biting winds and brutal reality. Late that afternoon, Sansa came to him, tearful, complaining that she had heard a rumor that the north had risen in rebellion. They say you are gathering an army, father, she pleaded. Is it true? Is King's Landing going to be attacked? Ned sighed, resting a comforting hand on her shoulder. No, my sweet girl. Those are just vicious rumors. No harm will come to you. You must remain vigilant, as I told you. But do not put faith in everything you hear. The city is full of rumor-mongers. She sniffled and nodded, but her eyes were still wide with uncertainty. Later, Arya appeared, scowling, showing him a bruised elbow from her latest sparring session with the butcher's boy. Apparently, the master-at-arms had scolded her for training with wooden swords outside his supervision. Ned tried to hide his amusement as he gently reminded Arya to be careful. He did not want her to lose that spirited determination that reminded him so much of his sister Lyanna, yet he needed her to remain discreet. The times were too dire for drawing unnecessary attention. He kissed her hair and sent her off to rest. That evening, Varys sent a discreet message. The scribe, Oren, had been found in a gambling den on the Street of Silk. 2 of Varys's men had quietly spirited him away to a safe location. If Ned wished to question him, he could do so at midnight under cover of darkness in a cellar below a closed tavern near Flea Bottom. Ned decided to go personally, though he took the precaution of summoning Jory Castle and a few of his most trusted guards. He told them only that they had to escort him on a matter of utmost secrecy and that they must not breathe a word to anyone. Night settled over King's Landing, the cramped streets illuminated only by distant lanterns and moonlight. The city's stench of rot, waste, and unwashed bodies hit Ned's nose as they made their way down steep, winding roads. Jory led the way, ensuring the path was clear, and the men behind them formed a quiet perimeter. Their footsteps echoed against cobblestones, occasionally disrupted by the laughter of late-night revelers or the scuttling of rats. Finally, they arrived at a rundown tavern with a faded sign that was so battered it was impossible to read. Varys stood by the door, his face shrouded by a hood. Inside, the air was damp, smelling of spilled ale and mold. They descended creaking stairs to a low-ceilinged cellar where a single lamp provided faint illumination. There, bound to a chair, was a trembling man who looked to be in his early 30s. He was small and wiry, with ink-stained fingers and red-rimmed eyes that darted nervously. Two of Varys's silent operatives stood guard at either side, their expressions impassive. When Ned entered, the scribe's fear seemed to intensify, and he began to babble. "I've done no harm at all," Oren blurted, his voice shaking. "I only copied what Lord Baelish dictated. I swear it. I swear I meant no treason." Ned held up a placating hand, nodding to Varys. The eunuch moved behind the scribe's chair, shadow-like. "Oren," Ned said in a calm tone, "I am Eddard Stark, the Hand of the King. I have no intention of harming you if you speak the truth. But I warn you, if you lie to me, I will know. And if I learn that you have deceived me, there will be consequences. Do you understand?" The scribe's teeth chattered. "Why, yes, my lord." "Good," Ned continued, folding his arms. "Tell me about the letters you copied, the messages you wrote for Lord Baelish. I want to know who they were addressed to, what they contained, everything." A tear leaked from Oren's eye as he swallowed hard. He would give me scrolls of parchment, blank but with certain lines pre-written in code. Then he'd dictate other lines. I was never allowed to see the full text at once. He'd have me write a line or two, then blot out the ink or fold it so I couldn't read the rest. But from time to time I caught glimpses. Some lines spoke of encouraging lords to rise against the Lannisters. Others spoke of funding Sellswords in the Riverlands. He said something about the Tullus being vulnerable. I never asked questions. He paid me well, and I thought it was all for some business dealing. Ned's heartbeat quickened. "What about the City Watch? Did he mention them?" "Yes, my lord," Oren whispered. "He wrote that certain watch captains would be pliable if given enough gold. He also said something about forging a relationship with men in the Vale. I recall the name Royce mentioned once, but I couldn't see more." Ned recognized House Royce as sworn to the Arryns. This could be part of a plot to destabilize multiple regions, ensuring a war that Littlefinger could exploit. "Do you have anything in writing?" Ned pressed. "Any copies, drafts, or references?" Oren shook his head frantically. "No, my lord. He always burned the scraps after. Always. If he caught me keeping anything, I'd be a dead man. He threatened me once when he saw me glancing too long. 'Eyes forward, scribe,' he said, 'or you'll lose them.' I never dared keep anything after that." Despair flickered in Ned's eyes. Without physical proof, they only had testimony. Granted, it was testimony that might be compelling, but Baelish could easily claim that Oren was lying or had been coerced. Then Ned recalled Varys's partial letters. Perhaps testimony could be married to those fragments, forming a cohesive pattern that none could ignore. "Oren," he said, "if you testify before the King's Council, would you repeat these words?" Panic welled in Oren's gaze. "Please, my lord, he will kill me if I do that. He has men everywhere, Ned placed a firm hand on the scribe's shoulder. "If you speak, I will do everything in my power to protect you. I will have you hidden away in the Red Keep under guard. No one will touch you. But if you remain silent, know that Baelish may decide you are a liability anyway. He will silence you the moment he suspects you've been taken. Your safest path is to cast your lot with me. I give you my word as Ned Stark." The scribe let out a small sob, tears sliding down his cheeks. "All right," he choked out. "All right? I'll do it. I'll tell everything." Ned felt both relief and dread. Securing Oren's testimony was a step forward, but the danger increased tenfold. If Baelish discovered the scribe's disappearance, he would suspect something was afoot. They had to act quickly, and yet they had to be precise. If the city soared into chaos before Robert's return, Ned might not have the authority to contain it. Cersei, Pycelle, and the rest of the council might turn on him. Or even the gold cloaks might side with Baelish if the coin was right. He ordered Jory to prepare a safe chamber within the Tower of the Hand. The guard would keep Oren there, letting no one in or out except for Ned himself. Varys agreed that it was for the best, as the labyrinthine Red Keep had too many eyes. Then, with grim determination, Ned made ready to depart. He left instructions for the cellar door to be locked and for the building to remain empty. No one would suspect the scribe's final location if the tavern appeared abandoned. Before leaving, Ned offered one last piece of reassurance to the trembling scribe. "You're doing the right thing," Ned murmured, "for the realm and for your own life. I will keep you safe, I swear it. The group ascended the stairs back into the night. The city was quiet now, with only a few flickering torches dotting the darkened streets. As Ned mounted his horse, he could not shake the feeling that they were being watched. Every window looked like a pair of eyes, every alley a waiting mouth. King's Landing was a city built on secrets, and tonight, Eddard Stark carried one of its most explosive secrets in tow, a man who could potentially bring down Peter Baelish. It was a small victory, but Ned sensed the war for truth had truly begun. He returned to the Red Keep around the second hour past midnight, ensuring Oren was safely hidden away. Despite his exhaustion, Ned could not sleep. He mulled over how best to proceed. Varys had suggested unveiling the entire scandal before Robert's arrival. But Ned worried that without the king's presence, the council might devolve into factional bickering that Baelish could exploit. Another possibility was to wait until Robert returned from his hunt, then present Oren and the letters to Robert himself. But Robert might be too entangled in his own frustrations and vices to handle the matter delicately. The king was known to act on anger and impulse. If Robert learned of Baelish's perfidy, it might end with a summary execution or a citywide purge. That might be just as disastrous. Still, Ned needed a definitive end to Baelish's manipulations. Morning came, and with it came more pressure. Ned was summoned once more to an urgent small council meeting. He left Oren under guard and instructed his men to remain silent about the scribe's presence. When Ned arrived at the council chambers, he found Pycelle, Renly Baratheon, and Varys already seated. Baelish's chair was empty. Cersei was not present, which both relieved and concerned him. As Ned took his seat, he noticed a certain tension in the air. Pycelle looked more frazzled than usual, his chains rattling as his hands trembled on the table. Renly gazed at Ned with curious eyes, as if searching for answers. Varys, for his part, maintained a calm veneer, though Ned sensed a subtle flicker of unease behind those placid features. "My lords," Renly began, "we have an urgent matter. Word has reached us that the king was gravely injured during his hunt. A boar gored him, and he's returning to the city with a fever. He may be near death." The chamber froze in that moment, a collective intake of breath. Ned's heart clenched. Robert, near death? The realm would be plunged into crisis. Joffrey's claim to the throne would arise. And if Joffrey ascended while Baelish still held sway? "Are we certain?" Ned asked, voice grim. Pycelle nodded sorrowfully, his aged eyes welling with tears that might have been genuine. "The reports are credible." He took a wound to the side. "They say it is mortal. He is being carried back as quickly as possible. The next day or so will tell." A hush settled on the council. The king was on the brink and the realm's future hung in the balance. Then Varys spoke softly, "Then we must ensure that the matters of the kingdom remain stable. Chaos will ensue otherwise." Ned thought of the secret he was holding about Cersei's children, Baelish's betrayal, all of it. If Robert died, Joffrey would be proclaimed king. And if that happened before Ned exposed Baelish, or before he could wrest control from the Lannisters, the realm might descend into a bloodbath. The moment had come. He would have to move swiftly and decisively. In the hush of the council chamber, Ned Stark realized that his alliance with Varys was more critical than ever. And far away, in the dark corners of King's Landing, Littlefinger was likely spinning new threads with every passing hour, ready to exploit the chaos of a dying king. He spoke evenly, masking the urgency that coursed through him like a battle drum. "Yes, we must keep order," Ned said. "And so we will. I have certain matters to attend to. With your leave, my lords, I will begin ensuring that the transition remains peaceful, whatever may come." They did not question him. The meeting ended quickly, overshadowed by the dreaded news of the king's mortal wound. Varys caught Ned's eye as they exited, and Ned gave a subtle nod, silently conveying that they would proceed. The game had accelerated, and the cost of failure was higher than ever. If they did not expose Littlefinger soon, the man could orchestrate a nightmare scenario in which Joffrey's coronation served as a gateway for endless schemes and betrayals. Ned swore that he would not allow it. He would not let the realm tear itself apart without trying to stop it. If need be, he would place all his chips on the line, trusting the word of a spider to catch a far more dangerous snake. That night, word arrived that Robert was but half a day from the city, carried on a litter, delirious from drink and pain. Ned summoned Varys to his solar, where the pair huddled with the flickering candle once again. Outside, the night sky was empty of stars, a silent, black canopy that pressed down upon the city. Their voices were soft, urgent, as they prepared the final move to unmask Littlefinger. They agreed on a plan. Ned would confront Baelish in the presence of the king's guard once Robert arrived, while Varys produced Oren's testimony and the letters. If Robert was too weak to act, they would at least have the combined authority of the council to place Baelish under arrest. It was risky, but any further delay would risk Joffrey's coronation, complicating matters beyond repair. They parted ways, each weighed down by the knowledge of what the next day might bring. Ned paced his chamber long after midnight, heart pounding. Could this truly forestall the war? Or was he merely lighting the fuse of another conflict, one that would consume them all? Duty. It was always about duty. Honor demanded he act for the good of the realm, but the realm's good was tangled in a net of lies. So be it, he thought. Sometimes the only way to break a net was to cleave it apart with a sword. Early the next morning, the caravan bearing King Robert arrived. Ned rushed to the courtyard, finding the king pale, sweating, covered in grime and dried blood. A vicious gash marred his side, and the stink of infection hung in the air. Servants scrambled, Pycelle hovered, but Robert, half in delirium, still managed a weak grin when he saw Ned. His breath was ragged, and each word looked like it cost him a piece of his soul. "Ned, my friend," Robert whispered, his once roaring voice now a mere rasp. "I did it, killed the damn boar. But... ha, it got me good." His head lolled as he was carried to his chambers. Ned followed, worry twisting in his gut. Once they laid Robert in bed, Pycelle and the other healers began attending him, applying poultices, mixing herbs for the fever. Ned stood at the foot of the bed, uncertain whether Robert even had the strength to hold court. The next hours were crucial, but if Robert was beyond reason, Ned would have to orchestrate Baelish's downfall with only the authority of the hand. And that authority might be contested by the Queen, who was conspicuously absent from the scene, only to reappear moments later with Joffrey in tow. The young prince wore a look of horror and fascination as he gazed upon his wounded father. Varys appeared behind Ned, silent as ever, a subtle nod confirming the next step. It was time to act. Summoning his courage, Ned turned to Pycelle and those gathered. "I must speak to the king," Ned said. "Alone with the council. Please, give us space." Cersei's eyes narrowed, suspicion flaring. "We do not have time for..." But Robert stirred, lifting an arm weakly. "Let Ned speak," he wheezed. She yielded with ill grace, stepping back, guiding Joffrey away, though the boy stubbornly tried to remain. Eventually, the king's bedchamber was left with only Robert, Ned, Varys, Renly, Pycelle, and Ser Barristan Selmy of the Kingsguard standing vigil. Robert's eyes flicked around, pain evident in every breath, but he forced out words. "Speak, Ned. I trust you. If I'm dying, there's a will. They can do as they like once I'm gone." A pang knifed through Ned's chest. He had not expected to see Robert in such a pitiful state. Their friendship spanned years, wars, joys, and losses. Now, to see the man so near death was a blow to everything Ned held dear. Yet he could not waver. The realm's future hung on this moment. "My king," Ned began, voice tight. "There is a matter of grave import you must hear. Concerns treason within your court. I believe Peter Baelish has conspired to sow discord in the realm. I have evidence and a witness who can testify to this." Renly let out a soft gasp. Pycelle opened his mouth in surprise, but Varys placed a gentle hand on the old maester's arm as though cautioning silence. Robert's face contorted in confusion. "Littlefinger?" He coughed harshly. "Treason? That slyworm." "Yes, my king," Ned continued. "He has bribed members of the City Watch, conspired with unscrupulous lords, and written letters implying a plan to plunge the realm into war. I have a witness in my custody who can confirm all of this under oath." Robert's eyes fluttered. If that's true, then he must pay. But how do I know? His voice trailed off as pain ravaged him again. Ned exchanged a look with Varys, who nodded. The Master of Whisperers slipped out, presumably to fetch Oren and the incriminating letters. Before Varys returned, though, a commotion sounded in the hallway. The door flew open, revealing Cersei, flanked by 2 gold cloaks, and, to Ned's alarm, Peter Baelish himself. The Master of Coin sauntered in with that mocking grin etched into his face. His eyes darted to Ned, then to the king on the bed, and a flicker of panic showed before he regained composure. "Your Grace," Baelish said smoothly, ignoring Ned. "I only just learned of your injury. I came at once. The city stands ready to serve you, though I've heard troubling whispers of threats against me. I can only hope these are misunderstandings or malicious rumors directed at dividing us." Ned's hand clenched into a fist. The nerve of Baelish, walking into the presence of a dying king, aiming to spin the narrative in his favor. But Ned refused to be outmaneuvered in this critical moment. "You stand accused, Lord Baelish," Ned declared, stepping forward, "of conspiring to incite conflict in the realm and bribing members of the City Watch." "There is a witness." Cersei interjected sharply, "This is absurd. Lord Baelish is a loyal servant of the crown, the realm's master of coin. Why would he conspire against the king when his standing depends on the crown's favor?" Baelish lowered his gaze, playing the role of a wounded party. "I am loyal to King Robert and the realm, your grace. These accusations come at a time when the king is gravely wounded, perhaps made by those who would see the realm in chaos." Ned realized how precarious this was. Without Oren and the letters in this room, Baelish could weave any tale he wished and Cersei would back him. Robert coughed violently, blood flecking his lips, his strength clearly fading by the moment. They had only minutes to secure a royal decree or some form of official condemnation that could not be reversed once Robert was gone. Just then, Varys returned, accompanied by Jory Castle and two of Ned's most trusted guards. Between them, they half-dragged Oren. The scribe's face was pale, but he stood with trembling resolve. Varys carried a small sheaf of parchments, presumably the partial letters. The tension in the room soared to a razor's edge. Cersei's eyes narrowed, scanning Oren's face. Baelish's lips twitched. "My king," Varys said softly, "here is the witness who can confirm the master of coin's treachery. And these letters, recovered through careful means, contain partial messages alluding to the conspiracy." Baelish took a half-step backward, the veneer of confidence cracking. "This is a farce," he hissed. "I have no knowledge of these letters. And who is this wretch?" Oren's voice, shaky but determined, rose. "I am Oren, a scribe in your employ, Lord Baelish. I wrote your letters. I saw references to bribes and orchestrated unrest. I copied line after line. If you deny it, you lie. You threatened me if I dared speak." Cersei's face blanched, and she turned to Robert, whose breathing rasped in the hush. The king's eyes darted between Baelish, Ned, and the scribe. "Baelish," he growled, forcing the words out. "Is there truth to this?" Maddeningly, Baelish let out a soft laugh, as though the entire matter were beneath him. "Your Grace, these are the ravings of a man clearly coerced or bribed by those who wish me ill. I have no doubt the letters Varys holds are fabrications. He is a master of whispers. After all, what better means of forging illusions?" Before Baelish could spin another lie, Ned spoke, voice firm. "The scribe will swear under oath. We will examine his handwriting and compare it to the letters you authorized. We can question the gold cloaks who have received your coin. Some will talk if pressed. This is not a conjurer's trick, Baelish." Robert coughed again, and the entire room seemed to swirl in the heaviness of the moment. Cersei's expression was unreadable, though her eyes flickered with a dangerous light. Renly and Pycelle exchanged uneasy glances. Baelish began to speak again, but Robert raised a hand weakly, silencing him. "I am too weak for this," the king gasped. "But if Ned Stark accuses you and Varys supports him," he paused to breathe. "I name Ned regent. If I die, he can sort out this mess." His eyes rolled back slightly, and Pycelle hurried forward to administer a foul-smelling concoction. Ned felt a wave of emotion. Robert was granting him regency. That was a far greater responsibility than Ned had desired, and it made him a target of every ambition in the realm. Baelish's face darkened at those words, while Cersei's lips parted in dismay. The queen stepped forward. "My king," she said gently, "surely I should be regent if you pass. I am your queen, and Joffrey is your son." Robert responded with another wet cough, half delirious. Ned is honorable. He'll do what's right. See that my realm doesn't burn." His breath rattled like a dying man's, and he lost consciousness. Pycelle and the attendants converged around Robert, forcing Cersei and the rest to step back. The queen's face was a mask of fury mixed with fear. Her lips pressed so tight they turned white. Baelish eyed Ned with a venomous glare. For a moment, no one spoke, the only sound that of Robert's labored breathing. At last, Renly broke the silence, sounding nearly breathless. You heard the king. Lord Stark is regent if the worst happens. In that capacity, he has the authority to investigate these charges. Baelish, I suggest you cooperate fully. Baelish's grin had vanished, replaced by a sneer. He dipped his head sarcastically. Of course, Lord Renly. I will do whatever is required to clear my name. Ned felt the strain in the air. Baelish was cornered, but cornered animals were dangerous. This confrontation had not been as final as he had hoped. The next steps would be to secure Baelish's arrest, see Oren's testimony formalized, and ensure the City Watch understood their new chain of command. But with Robert so close to death, the Queen might attempt a power grab at any moment. Ned could almost taste the tension, thick and bitter in the back of his throat. He decided to act decisively. He nodded to Ser Barristan, who stood stoically by Robert's bed. Ser Barristan, Ned said, I need you to escort Lord Baelish to a secure chamber while we arrange the testimony. For the sake of the king and the realm, we must ensure that no outside influence sways the proceedings. Cersei stepped in, her voice cutting. You will not imprison a member of the small council without a formal hearing, Lord Stark. Ned faced her evenly. He is merely being escorted to ensure his presence at the hearing. He will not be harmed unless he attempts to flee. If these accusations are false, then Lord Baelish will be free soon enough. But if they are true, we cannot risk him slipping away. For a moment it seemed Baelish might resist. His hand hovered near his belt, where a dagger was sheathed. Ser Barristan, noticing, placed a hand on his sword hilt. The gold cloaks near the Queen looked uncertain, caught between loyalties. Varys watched everything silently, a nearsighted spider observing the struggles in his web. Finally, Baelish raised his hands in mock surrender. I will go, he said in a low tone. I am no traitor. Time will prove that. With that, Ser Barristan and two of Ned's guards led Baelish away. A hush followed, broken only by the ragged sounds of Robert's breathing. Ned turned to Renly and Varys, ignoring Cersei's glare. We must secure the city, he said. We need the gold cloaks under command loyal to the crown, not to Baelish or anyone else. Renly, can I rely on you to take charge of the City Watch for the time being? Renly nodded, though uncertainty clouded his features. Yes, if that is your command as hand. But if the Queen objects? Ned's gaze flicked to Cersei, whose face was twisted with anger. I have the king's command, he said quietly. Until he recovers or passes, I am regent by his decree. The Queen may object, but the king's word is law. That is our way. Cersei's voice trembled, laced with suppressed fury. You may be regent by Robert's word, but do not forget who holds the royal children in her care, Lord Stark. She turned on her heel and swept out, the gold cloaks following. The unspoken threat hung in the air like a blade. Varys released a long breath. We have forced her hand. Pray that we are ready for the consequences. Ned nodded grimly. The first strike had been made, but the war for control of the realm's future was just beginning. Peter Baelish was in custody, but for how long? And Cersei Lannister was not a woman to be trifled with. She would strike back if she felt cornered and the realm might still bleed. But for now, Ned had done what honor demanded. He had exposed the traitor before he could plunge the Seven Kingdoms into a war that would leave nothing but ashes behind. It was a slender hope, but hope nonetheless, that if Robert survived, or if the transition of power was handled carefully, the realm might be spared the worst of what men like Baelish had prepared. That night, as Ned stood in the courtyard watching the last of the daylight fade, he was joined by Varys. The Master of Whisperers stepped lightly beside him, letting out a quiet sigh of relief. You have done what many thought impossible, my lord. You have cornered Lord Baelish. Not yet, Ned said softly. He's cornered only if the council stands firm, if the gold cloaks obey me, if Robert either recovers or dies soon enough that we can name a rightful heir without dispute. He paused, remembering that the rightful heir might not be Joffrey at all if the truth of his parentage came to light. But that was another storm waiting in the wings. Varys inclined his head, acknowledging the labyrinth yet to be navigated. Then we can only pray, the eunuch said in a near whisper. I have never been good at praying, my lord, but for the realm's sake, perhaps I should learn. Ned couldn't help the small, humorless smile that tugged at his lips. "Pray if you like, Lord Varys. In the end, we will do what we must." They stood there together, two men bound by an alliance as fragile as a spider's thread, staring into the gathering darkness. The shape of things to come was uncertain, like distant thunder on the horizon promising a storm. But for the moment at least, one of the realm's deadliest vipers had been caged. And Ned Stark, for better or worse, stood ready to weather whatever trials came next, determined that the realm would not descend into chaos without a fight. The next day dawned in a haze of gold and gray. Clouds scudded across the sky, and the wind off the Blackwater carried the tang of brine. Robert was alive, but only just, drifting in and out of consciousness, his fever breaking momentarily before returning in full force. Ned struggled to keep the peace, for word had spread that the king was at death's door, and men with ambition began flocking to the Red Keep like crows to a dying beast. Cersei closeted herself with Joffrey, Myrcella, and Tommen, refusing to yield them to Ned's care. No immediate rebellion rose among the Lannisters. Tyrion was still rumored to be traveling in the Vale, and Tywin was far away at Casterly Rock, but Ned knew that if Robert died, Tywin would not remain silent for long. After a brief council session during which Renly announced that he was taking direct command of the city watch as instructed, Ned visited Peter Baelish in the cell where he was being held. The dungeon was dank and stifling. Flickering torchlight danced across the stone walls. Baelish sat on a wooden bench, appearing surprisingly composed despite the circumstances. He looked up when Ned entered, a wry smile twisting his lips. "My dear Lord Stark," Baelish drawled. "I wondered when you'd pay me a visit. How does it feel, I wonder, to wield the power of life and death as regent?" Ned stood firm, arms crossed. "I'm here to give you a chance to explain yourself," he said. "We have evidence and a witness who claim that you intended to spark war across the realm. If you confess and name your co-conspirators, the king, should he recover, might show you mercy." A faint laugh escaped Baelish's throat. "Mercy? That's rich coming from you. And tell me, Ned Stark, what if the king does not recover? Will you claim the same mercy in the name of King Joffrey, or perhaps King Stannis? Or do you still cling to that rumor about the boy's parentage? My, you do have your hands full." Ned's expression hardened. The mention of Joffrey's parentage cut deeper than he cared to show. The truth was a festering wound he had yet to reveal, uncertain how best to do so without igniting immediate conflict. "I am not here to bandy words," Ned growled. "Your actions speak for themselves. You tried to bribe the City Watch to lay the seeds of chaos in the Riverlands and beyond. Why? What did you hope to gain?" Baelish's sly grin only broadened. "Everything, Lord Stark. Everything. A man's ambition can be boundless, especially a man who was once made to feel small. But you should know, if you do succeed in executing me, you will merely be removing one piece from the board. The game itself continues. Varys remains. The Lannisters remain. The Tyrells, the Martells, the Ironborn, the Targaryen girl across the sea, so many hungry wolves in the dark. Killing me will not save the realm from the storm that's coming. At best, you've delayed it." Ned studied Baelish's face. For a moment, he saw in those mocking eyes not just arrogance, but a strange form of pity or even regret. "Perhaps so," Ned admitted, "but your manipulations were aimed at making that storm worse. I intend to lessen it if I can." Baelish sighed, leaning back against the cold stone wall. "Ah, Ned, you are as honest as you are naive. I once thought that quality in you might be endearing, but it will be your undoing. If you're wise, you'll let me go and use my talents to secure your position. If you truly believe you can hold the realm together with honor alone, you'll find yourself in the same predicament as your father, his head on a spike, courtesy of a mad king." The reference to Ned's father left him momentarily winded, but he shoved the memory aside. "I'll take my chances," he replied firmly. "We will hold a formal hearing soon. If you have nothing more to say, then I am done here." Without waiting for Baelish's retort, Ned turned on his heel and left. The echo of Baelish's soft laughter followed him out, stirring an unease that refused to subside. Yet Ned knew that the only path forward was through the truth. He was too far along to back away now. As the day progressed, lords began arriving at the Red Keep in greater numbers. Some came to pay their respects to the dying king, others to jockey for positions of influence. The air was thick with tension. Renly took command of the gold cloaks, but Ned noticed that not all of them seemed pleased with the shift in authority. Baelish's men had lined their pockets well, and loyalty bought by coin was fickle. Varys flitted about, presumably ensuring that his own network remained intact, while Pycelle spent most of his time trying to keep Robert alive. Ned maintained a watchful eye on Cersei, but she kept a low profile, showing no immediate sign of an open coup. Perhaps she waited for Robert to die before making her move. 2 days after Baelish's arrest, Robert's condition took a dire turn. The fever spiked, and he rambled in delirium, calling out names from the past: Lyanna, Rhaegar, the laughter of his youth echoing through words that made no sense. Ned stood by the bed, listening to the king's final confessions as he flickered between the present and the horrors of memory. "I wanted to be a better king," Robert mumbled once, gripping Ned's wrist with surprising strength for a dying man. "But the wine, the hunts, all of it, none of it filled the void. She left me, Lyanna." Then he coughed, a wet, gurgling sound that wrenched Ned's heart. At midnight, with only Ned and Ser Barristan in the chamber, Robert Baratheon, the first of his name, let out a long, shuddering breath and was still. The king was dead. Barristan bowed his head in grief, tears brimming in the eyes of a knight who had served under so many kings. Ned felt a hollow ache in his chest. Robert's death was no small thing. A man he had once called brother was gone, and with him the last tether to their shared rebellion and the illusions of their youthful dreams. But there was no time to mourn. The realm's future hung in the balance. He had to secure order to ensure that the succession did not spiral into war. He told Barristan to gather the council and the High Lords in the throne room at dawn. For the remainder of the night, Ned prepared himself mentally, remembering Robert's final decree naming him regent. He had the parchment with Robert's seal, though the king's shaky hand had scrawled a signature that was almost unreadable. Would that be enough to keep the lords in line? More importantly, what of Joffrey, who so many believed to be Robert's son? The next morning, the throne room filled with a subdued crowd. Lords and ladies wore expressions that ranged from shock to cautious anticipation. At the front stood the Iron Throne, a jagged monstrosity forged from 1,000 swords. Ned, with a stoic set to his jaw, approached the dais. Renly stood beside him while Varys lingered in the shadows. Pycelle, trembling, whispered prayers under his breath. And then Cersei swept in, robed in black, with Joffrey, Myrcella, and Tommen at her side. The gold cloaks parted, forming an aisle. The hush was absolute. Cersei halted a short distance from the throne, eyes burning with a fierce light. Joffrey looked around with an expression of mingled awe and bravado, as though he already believed the crown to be his. Ned stepped forward, producing the parchment from within his cloak. "My lords and ladies," he began, his voice echoing in the cavernous hall. "King Robert Baratheon has passed into the arms of the gods. Before he died, he named me regent to rule in the best interest of the realm until the rightful heir assumes the throne." The hush broke as gasps and murmurs swept across the assembly. Some looked to Joffrey, others to Ned, confusion plain on their faces. Cersei's lips curled. "My son," she declared, placing a hand on Joffrey's shoulder, "is the rightful heir. By all the laws of the realm, he is Robert's trueborn son and shall be crowned Joffrey Baratheon, the second of his name." Ned felt the weight of destiny pressing on him. This was the moment where he could either yield or speak the truth he had uncovered, the truth that Joffrey had no drop of Baratheon blood in his veins. But that truth, if voiced without care, might ignite immediate war. Then he remembered the vow he made to protect the realm from descending into chaos. Could he truly put forward this claim now without first consolidating enough support to prevent a Lannister backlash? He took a breath, glancing at Renly, who gave a small nod of encouragement. Renly believed that the throne should pass to Stannis, Robert's older younger brother, if Joffrey was deemed illegitimate. Another spark that could light the realm on fire. Slowly, Ned spoke, "The kings will name me regent. Until the matter of succession is resolved, I ask that Joffrey remain under the guardianship of the council." His voice was measured, seeking a middle path, but tension crackled through the hall like lightning. Cersei's voice lashed out. "Your claims of regency be damned. The king is dead, and my son shall be crowned. Stand aside, Lord Stark." Some of the gold cloaks shifted uncertainly, their loyalties tested. Ned knew he needed a show of force, something to break Cersei's hold. He looked over at Renly, who signaled to the city watch. A contingent moved forward, placing themselves between Ned and the Lannisters. But the Lannisters had their own loyal men, and swords began to rasp from scabbards. For a heartbeat, it seemed the throne room would erupt in bloodshed. Varys stepped forth, raising a calming hand. "My lords, please. There is no need for violence. Remember that Peter Baelish is held under suspicion of treason. Let us not allow the realm to be further unsettled by open conflict. We can deliberate the rightful succession in an orderly manner, as King Robert would have wished." Cersei turned a baleful eye to Varys. "Do not speak to me of Robert's wishes, eunuch." Then she glared at Ned. "You have crossed me for the last time, Lord Stark. You hold Littlefinger in your cells, you spout talk of conspiracies, and now you obstruct my son's coronation. This is not a debate. Joffrey is king, and you will bend the knee or lose your head." Ned's heart pounded. The final line had been drawn. He sensed the swirl of eyes upon him. Some lords waited to see if he would yield. Others waited to see if they would back him in defiance. The fate of the 7 kingdoms hinged on a single decision. And in that moment, Ned felt the presence of all those who had gone before him, the memory of his father, his brother, all who had suffered under a mad king, all who had died in wars that might have been prevented by timely action. With measured resolve, Ned knelt. Gasps rippled through the hall. He bowed his head, but not in surrender. "I will serve the realm," he declared, voice carrying. "As King Robert charged me. If Joffrey is truly the rightful heir, I will do my duty. But if the realm disputes his claim, we must abide by the law. I pray you, Queen Regent, allow time for the council to confirm the line of succession." Joffrey's face twisted in petulant anger. "I am the king. I don't need it." But Cersei placed a hand on Joffrey's arm, stopping him. She stared at Ned, the tension in her posture lessening a fraction. "Very well," she said, voice crisp. "We shall have a coronation soon. In the meantime, we will hold a hearing regarding Lord Baelish. You may remain his hand under watch until the matter is settled." She shot a fierce glare at the city watch, ensuring they understood that any sign of revolt would be met with lethal force. Ned stood, relieved that open bloodshed had been averted for the moment. The tension in the throne room remained thick, but the swords began sliding back into their scabbards. In the corner, Varys exhaled softly, perhaps the only one aware of how close they had come to a massacre. Outside, sunlight glared off the red stone walls. Ned blinked in the brightness as he left the hall, his mind reeling. He had knelt and in doing so avoided immediate civil war, but at what cost? Joffrey, a child of incest, was mere steps from wearing the crown, and Cersei's power was undiminished. Baelish awaited a hearing which would be overshadowed by the chaos of the succession crisis. The realm was teetering. Yet Ned clung to a slender hope. If the hearing exposed Baelish and the full measure of his schemes, perhaps the shock of that revelation would undermine the Lannisters' position enough for Ned to maneuver them into a settlement or at least keep them from butchering their rivals. He prayed silently that his gamble would pay off. The following day, the hearing was convened in the Great Hall. It was less grand than the coronation that many anticipated, but still heavily attended by lords, ladies, and knights eager to see the downfall of Peter Baelish or to witness a spectacle of cunning. Baelish was brought forward in chains, head held high despite his predicament. Oren stood by Ned's side, pale but resolute, prepared to testify. The partial letters were laid out and the scribes confirmed that the handwriting matched that of Baelish's personal scribe. Varys testified that he had discovered the letters through channels that traced back to Baelish's correspondences. Renly supported Ned's claims of Baelish's attempts to bribe the gold cloaks. Even Pycelle offered a quavering statement about receiving suspicious communications from Baelish. Baelish, for his part, denied everything. He claimed the letters were forged, the testimony coerced. He alleged that Ned Stark, craving more power, had orchestrated this entire ruse to remove him as a rival. The crowd buzzed with speculation, uncertain whom to believe. The tension rose higher when Baelish insinuated that Ned had discovered something else, something so damaging that he dared not speak it aloud. Murmurs rippled, though Ned refused to take the bait. He stuck to the facts. Slowly, a picture emerged of Baelish forging alliances in the Vale, the Riverlands, and within the City Watch, all to engineer a crisis that would benefit him financially and politically once the realm dissolved into warfare. When the testimonies were done, many looked to Ned as regent to pass judgment. But Cersei, seated near the front with Joffrey by her side, spoke first. "These are serious accusations," she said. "Yet the proof offered rests on the word of a scribe, the convenience of letters provided by Varys, and the claims of Lord Stark, who is not exactly unbiased. I ask the lords of the realm gathered here, do we condemn a man who has served the crown faithfully for years on such uncertain evidence?" Oren, shaking, raised his voice. "I swear on the gods, old and new, that Peter Baelish," but he was cut off by a sudden commotion. One of the gold cloaks standing near him lunged forward. Before anyone could react, the soldier stabbed Oren in the gut. A scream tore through the hall. Ned drew his sword, roaring, "Stop him." But chaos exploded. The gold cloak who stabbed Oren tried to run, only to be cut down by Renly's men. Shouts and screams filled the air. Oren lay in a pool of blood, gasping for breath, the life draining from him. Baelish looked stunned, or perhaps triumphant. Ned could not tell in the tumult. Ned rushed to Oren's side, but it was too late. The man's eyes flickered and his lips moved soundlessly, a final exhalation of regret. Ned's heart sank. Their primary witness was gone, murdered in plain sight. The hearing erupted into a frenzy of accusations and panic. Baelish stared impassively, though a trace of a smirk ghosted his lips. Cersei feigned horror, commanding the guards to restore order. Joffrey looked both fascinated and terrified by the sudden violence. Renly tried to subdue the crowd while Varys slipped through the chaos like a silent wraith, attempting to calm the lords. When order finally returned, Ned stood, sword drawn, and pointed it at Baelish. "This was your doing," he snarled. "Your agent just silenced the main witness against you." Cersei stepped in with icy precision. "Are you suggesting Lord Baelish commanded this guard to murder his own accuser in the midst of a public hearing? That seems beyond foolish even for the cunning master of coin. Did you not consider the possibility that some other hand orchestrated it, perhaps a rival to see this hearing fail?" Ned's rage nearly blinded him, but he fought to keep his voice steady. "That guard may have ties to you or Baelish. I will see the truth revealed." Baelish shrugged, chains rattling. "All I know is that a man who claimed to be your star witness is now dead. That hardly aids my cause, does it? More likely, someone else arranged this to keep the realm divided." Sickened, Ned realized that Baelish would twist even this murder to his advantage. The evidence without Oren's living testimony might not be enough to convict him decisively. The city watch was splintered, loyalties uncertain. And with Joffrey on the cusp of coronation, the Lannisters could turn the tide in Baelish's favor. If the hearing concluded with insufficient proof, Baelish might walk free and become more dangerous than ever. A hush befell the chamber as many realized the precarious state of the evidence. Renly stepped forward, trying to salvage the situation. "We have the partial letters," he said. "We have the testimony of Grand Maester Pycelle, though he's hardly comprehensive. We have Varys's statements. Surely that is enough to warrant a verdict." Cersei's eyes glittered. "A verdict? On such circumstantial pieces? The crown cannot be seen to condemn a lord without due certainty. The realm would not stand for it." Ned gripped his sword, wanting nothing more than to run Baelish through. But that would only confirm the Queen's claims of tyranny. With Oren's death, the case was severely weakened. The best Ned could do was place Baelish under indefinite confinement, but how long could that last without a formal conviction? Meanwhile, the wheels of Joffrey's coronation would not stop turning. Time was slipping away. Sensing the shifting mood, Varys glided to Ned's side. "My Lord Regent," he whispered. "Best to end these proceedings for now. The city teeters on riot." Ned stood on the dais, looking out over the assembled lords. Their faces were drawn with apprehension or sly curiosity, each faction calculating their next move. He glanced at Baelish, who returned his gaze with a calm, knowing expression. This was no victory. It was a stalemate, and in this game, a stalemate meant a slow unraveling of the realm's peace. "Take Lord Baelish back to his cell," Ned ordered, voice tight. "We will resume once the matter of the City Watch's infiltration is fully investigated." Two of Renly's guards seized Baelish, dragging him away. The crowd murmured, many unsatisfied, some relieved that no immediate violence broke out. Ned prayed this measure would hold at least until he found another angle. After the hearing ended, Ned retreated to the Tower of the Hand, mind a-whirl with grim reflections. Varys soon joined him there, silent as a whisper, and bowed his head. "I am sorry," he said softly. "I did not anticipate that the scribe would be slain in such a brazen manner." Ned paced the room. "It seems I underestimated Baelish's reach, or perhaps Cersei's. Either way, the witness is gone, and these letters alone may not be enough to sentence him. If I try, half the council will object, claiming we have insufficient evidence." Varys nodded. "The Queen has effectively stalled the matter. She needs Baelish alive for now. Perhaps once she has her son crowned, she may see advantage in letting him die quietly. But for the moment, she gains leverage by keeping him as a bargaining chip." Ned sank into a chair, exhausted by the relentless politics. Robert's death and Joffrey's imminent coronation overshadow everything. The realm is on a knife's edge. I've tried to expose Littlefinger, and in doing so, I've only placed him under suspicion. But a suspicion is not a conviction. War may still come. Varys stood still, lacing his fingers. "You have done what you could, Lord Stark. You have prevented the worst outcome." Baelish's full plan to set the realm aflame has been thwarted. He is under lock and key, even if not formally condemned. At least for now, he cannot wreak more havoc from the shadows. Ned nodded, though a hollow ache filled his chest. Honor demanded more. He wanted to see Baelish punished for the lives he had endangered, the chaos he had unleashed. But the web of court intrigue was not so easily cut. Perhaps, in time, Baelish's other conspirators would surface, or the Gold Cloak who murdered Oren could be traced to a direct link. There were still possibilities, but the cost had been high. And now Joffrey's coronation loomed, threatening to set off another chain of events that could plunge the realm into civil war. As Ned gazed out the window at the city below, huddled rooftops, winding alleys, the trickle of the Blackwater, he felt a pang of sorrow for the common folk who would suffer if war broke out. He had done his best to end Baelish's machinations before they ignited the full powder keg. With Varys's help, he had at least removed the man's immediate ability to stir conflict. But the seeds of distrust and ambition still lay buried across the Seven Kingdoms. Cersei, Tywin, Renly, Stannis, perhaps even others like the Arryns or Tullis, so many had claims, grudges, ambitions that could only be resolved through cunning or force. Dusk arrived in a slow wash of purple and orange across the sky. Ned stood by a narrow window, alone, replaying the events in his mind. He thought of the north, of his children, of Winterfell's stark beauty and the simplicity of life before he came south. There, truth was as cold and sharp as the winter wind, and men faced it plainly. Here, illusions and half-truths were the coin of the realm. He sighed, wishing he could simply ride away from King's Landing forever. But that was not his path. He had a duty, however cruel it might be. A soft knock at his door interrupted his brooding. Jory Castle entered, bowing respectfully. "My lord," Jory said, "I bring word from the City Watch. Several gold cloaks who were known to take Baelish's coin have fled the city. Some of them left last night, presumably to avoid questioning." Ned closed his eyes for a moment. So they slipped through her fingers, no doubt carrying messages or forging new alliances. "We must remain vigilant. If any remain loyal to Baelish, they might try another attack or spread the rumor that I'm orchestrating all of this to seize power." Jory nodded, solemn. "What would you have us do, my lord?" Ned gazed into the corridor behind Jory as though looking at a vision of the future. "Double the guard around Baelish. Place watchers on the city gates. Forbid any significant troop movements without my written order. And tell Renly that I want daily reports from the City Watch. We must clamp down on the city before the coronation." Jory dipped his head. "It will be done." Left alone again, Ned wondered if he had only delayed the inevitable. Even though Baelish was effectively neutralized for the moment, other threats loomed, so numerous that they blurred into one another. Yet in the silence of his room, with the memory of Robert's final breath still haunting him, Ned found a subtle solace. He had acted before the war began, had prevented Littlefinger from lighting the spark that would have consumed the realm. One man's cunning was thwarted, and while that did not mean the realm was safe, it meant they had a chance. Sometimes, in King's Landing, that was the best outcome one could hope for. Night fell completely, and a hush took the corridors of the Red Keep. Far below, the city lived on, torches flickering, taverns roaring, secrets whispered in dark corners. Above, in the Tower of the Hand, Ned Stark stared at a single candle flame, thinking of those words that echoed in the crypts of Winterfell: "Winter is coming." Indeed, a great darkness was coming, a darkness of war, betrayal, and unforeseen calamities. Yet Eddard Stark had at least removed one viper from the nest before its bite could poison the kingdom. If fate or the gods permitted, that alone might save thousands of lives from the conflagration that so many seemed determined to ignite. He bowed his head in silent prayer, not just to the old gods of the north, but to any power that might listen. The realm needed all the hope it could gather. In the flickering glow of that candle, Ned resolved that whatever came next, be it a war for succession, a confrontation with the Lannisters, or the dreaded approach of winter, he would face it with the same steadfast honor he had always tried to embody. And perhaps, just perhaps, that would be enough to keep the Seven Kingdoms from tearing themselves apart. He extinguished the flame and turned to the darkness, each step echoing softly as he left the solar. Outside, the night waited, vast and inscrutable, and Ned Stark walked into its embrace, burdened yet unbroken, heart resolute in the face of the trials yet to come. Eddard Stark pressed both hands against the balustrade, gazing down into the torchlit sprawl of King's Landing. Night had settled thickly over the city, a cloak of deep blues and shadowy grays. The sea breeze carried a tang of salt and the distant clamor of fishmongers wrapping up their late business by the docks. Yet there was no hush in the capital. The bars and wine sinks still bellowed with raucous laughter, the street of silk still hummed with secret intrigues, and the Red Keep still bristled with tension that seemed to pour out of every stone. Ned closed his eyes for a moment, letting himself feel the pulse of the place. He was so far from Winterfell, too far, perhaps. Robert Baratheon was dead, the realm's sun had set. That blow still hollowed Ned. He had known Robert since they were boys, and though the man on the throne had hardly resembled the friend of his youth, Robert's final moments had cut Ned deeper than any southern intrigues ever could. And now, the aftermath. Joffrey, the child Ned believed to be no true Baratheon at all, was poised to claim the Iron Throne. As for Ned, he was regent by Robert's last decree, though that decree was only parchment and ink. The city was a tinderbox. He could feel it in the air, the tension building as the Lannisters gathered power, as gold cloaks questioned loyalties, as murmurs spread through taverns and alleyways. War had not broken out yet, but the threat of it trembled in every glance exchanged between lords, every footfall of a guard patrolling the walls. He knew too well how quickly chaos could ignite. It had nearly erupted at the hearing where he had tried to bring Peter Baelish's conspiracies to light. But the crucial witness, the scribe Oren, had been slain in front of everyone, his spilled blood a stark message. The Game of Thrones devoured the innocent first. Baelish was now locked in a cell beneath the Red Keep, but his guilt was difficult to prove without living testimony. The partial letters Varys had uncovered weren't enough to condemn him outright, and the Queen Regent, Cersei, pressed relentlessly for Baelish's release. She claimed the hearing had been inconclusive, that Oren's murder could have been carried out by any party of ill repute seeking to discredit Baelish. In the swirl of rumor, half the lords questioned whether the scribe had been bribed or manipulated by Ned himself. Ned gripped the balustrade harder, remembering Baelish's calm, mocking voice in the dungeons. "You have removed one piece," he had said, "but the game itself continues." As much as Ned disliked the notion, he could not deny its truth. Removing Baelish from the board was no easy feat, and even if he managed it, a dozen other serpents coiled in the shadows. The events of the last few days had underscored that reality. Cersei was nothing if not determined to see Joffrey crowned, and she had the cunning to bring half the realm to her side if it suited her. Ned's hold on power as regent was tenuous at best, buttressed only by the King's final decree and the nominal support of a small council already fraying at the edges. He exhaled and turned away from the courtyard. All day he had been in council meetings, battered by petty demands, urgent requests, and quiet threats. Renly Baratheon, who commanded the city watch, remained uneasy in his new role. The gold cloaks had been riddled with men once loyal to Baelish's coin. Renly was doing his best to weed them out, but it was slow work. Varys, that ever-shifting spider, flitted between corners of the Red Keep, gleaning secrets and passing bits of intelligence to Ned. Sometimes, though, Ned wondered if Varys withheld as much as he shared. Then there was Grand Maester Pycelle, constantly wringing his hands and fretting about how quickly the realm might slip into anarchy. Meanwhile, lords from distant corners, Dorne, the Reach, the Stormlands, began arriving in King's Landing or sending raven letters, uncertain of what to do in the face of Robert's death. Tywin Lannister had not yet marched, but rumors placed him in the west, gathering men under some pretense of safeguarding his granddaughter Mycella's interests. The Tullys waited in Riverrun, though Edmure Tully, Catelyn's brother, was anxious and enraged by the idea that House Lannister might gain further ascendancy. Nothing was settled and everything seemed perched on the edge of a knife. When Ned finally came back to his solar in the Tower of the Hand, he found the chamber dimly lit by a single lamp. Someone was inside, waiting. Alarmed, his hand went to the pommel of his sword, but a familiar voice whispered, "Easy, my lord. It is only I." Lord Varys stepped from the shadows like a wraith, inclining his smooth, bald head in apology. Ned let his hand drop. "You've a gift for skulking in the dark." Varys offered a small, rueful smile. "In daylight, I fade into the crowds. In darkness, I fade into the walls. Such is the burden of my position." He gestured to a flagon of wine left on the table. "Shall I pour for you, Lord Stark?" Ned shook his head. "I will keep my wits sharp, thank you." Varys set the flagon down and folded his hands. "Then let me speak plainly. I have word. The Queen means to summon a gathering of High Lords on the morrow in the Great Hall to proclaim Joffrey's ascension as king. I do not think she will wait another day. Already, certain lords of the Stormlands and Crownlands have arrived at her request. She wants to be done with ceremony and see Joffrey crowned before your regency can fully tighten its grip." A heavy knot formed in Ned's gut. "So soon?" Varys nodded gravely. "Too soon, some would say, but the Lannisters fear you may move to name Stannis Baratheon if you have time to muster the realm. By crowning Joffrey at once, they gain the advantage. The moment he is declared king, if you resist, it will be framed as open treason." Ned paced, boots grinding against the stone floor. "Robert's final decree named me regent with full powers until the rightful heir is established. But that parchment is worthless if half the realm sides with Joffrey." "Indeed. And that is precisely why the Queen is pressing so hard. She knows that many lords still have not declared themselves. Uncertainty paralyzes them, but a crowned king, even a boy, offers certainty. Cersei will spin it as necessary for peace, a stable monarchy to ward off chaos. Ned scrubbed a hand across his face. He was weary to the bone. Then I must speak with Renly first. If he stands by me, the City Watch stands by me, and the coronation might be delayed. I can force them to hold a proper council to verify the line of succession. Varys gave a noncommittal tilt of the head. Perhaps. But a word of caution, the gold cloaks are only as loyal as the man who pays them, and Baelish spread coin far and wide. Some watchmen remain uncertain. If the Queen decides to offer them even more gold, and if Lord Renly's own men are outnumbered, things could end badly in a hurry. Ned's mood darkened. What is to be done, then? Do we stand idle and let Joffrey be crowned on the morrow? That is a choice only you can make, my lord, Varys murmured. I can only warn you of the dangers. The Queen grows bold. She may find a way to free Baelish as well, should that serve her ends. Another piece on the board returned to her side. Ned thought of Peter Baelish rotting in his cell. The man had orchestrated so many quiet betrayals, merchants, gold cloaks, even stirring trouble in the Riverlands to aggravate House Tully. Unmasking him had been a small miracle. Leaving him alive while the realm hovered on the brink might be a perilous choice. Still, Ned was not one for executing a prisoner without due process, however savage the times. And there was part of him that still remembered the boy Peter had been at Riverrun, the naive young upstart who had dueled Ned's brother Brandon for Catelyn's hand. That man was long gone, replaced by a cunning snake. Yet Ned couldn't simply order a beheading without the full weight of evidence. He flexed his aching shoulder muscles. I will not stoop to murder a man in a cell, not even Baelish. The hearing remains in a deadlock, but if we get more proof that he orchestrated Oren's murder, I could condemn him. Right now, I fear the Queen would seize upon it as an excuse to brand me a usurper. Varys's eyes darted to the door as though confirming they were alone. You and I have found ourselves strange allies, my lord. But let me tell you truly, men like Baelish always plan for contingencies. Even if imprisoned, he may hold letters or instructions that will be acted upon in his absence. We must keep watch, ensure none of his webs remain hidden. I will. Varys inclined his head. Then I take my leave. Dawn comes early, and so does a false king's coronation unless you act. The Master of Whisperers slipped out quietly, leaving Ned with a mind abuzz. The single lamp in the solar sputtered, casting dancing shadows across the walls. Outside the windows, King's Landing glowed faintly with scattered torchlight, but the sky above was moonless. A city in the dark, Ned thought. It was a fitting image for a realm uncertain of its next ruler. He sank onto a chair, staring at the table where Robert's battered will lay under a small paperweight. How many men would have died for that scrap of parchment? More than he cared to guess. His father's voice echoed in memory. When the snows fall and the white winds blow, the lone wolf dies, but the pack survives. Yet in King's Landing, there was no pack for Ned Stark. He had allies, yes, but each one tenuous, each with their own secrets. Eventually, he forced himself to stand again. If Joffrey's coronation was set for the morrow, he had a handful of hours to prepare. Calling upon his own men, those from the north who had come with him, he ordered them to be ready. Any sign of Lannister aggression, and they were to shield his daughters. Sansa and Arya must not become hostages. He thought of Catelyn too, far away, uncertain if she was with their son Robb in the north or still traveling. The separation weighed on him. Each letter he sent took weeks to answer. In the swirling storm of the capital, time was a precious commodity he no longer had. He left the Tower of the Hand under cover of darkness, escorted by Jory Castle and 2 guards, heading to where Lord Renly was quartered in the Red Keep. Torchlight guttered in the corridors. Lannister guards stood watch near the Queen's apartments, eyes suspicious as Ned passed. He said nothing. Renly's chamber was 2 floors down, a suite that had belonged once to some cousin of the Targaryen line in times past. Jory rapped on the door, and after a moment, a bleary-eyed guard let them in. Inside, Renly was still dressed, pacing before a table strewn with maps and letters. His black hair was ruffled as though he had run his hands through it 100 times. He looked up sharply at Ned's entrance. Lord Stark, he said in hushed tones, I've been expecting you. Ned glanced at the scattered parchments. You've heard, then? Renly nodded. Yes. The Queen has wasted no time. She sent word to me directly, summoning me to attend my nephew's coronation at first light. There will be a procession to the throne room, no doubt all pomp and ceremony. Ned let out a ragged breath. We cannot allow them to simply crown him unchallenged. Robert named me regent. Renly cut in, bitterness in his tone. Cersei cares nothing for that decree. Half the lords in attendance will back Joffrey just to stay on the queen's good side. And your evidence regarding the boy's parentage is not widely known. Or if it is, they dismiss it as rumor. They need to see something definite or they'll call you a traitor for questioning the king's legitimacy. Ned stared at the younger Baratheon. Sometimes he was reminded of Robert's boldness in Renly's features, but the differences were equally striking. Renly's cunning spark, his political instincts, that dash of flamboyance Robert had never possessed. You are Robert's brother, Ned said. What do you believe is the correct line of succession? Renly hesitated, then spoke quietly. If Joffrey is not Robert's son, then the crown falls to Stannis, my elder brother. By all the laws of inheritance, it must be him. Yet we both know Stannis. He is not a man to inspire love. He is too stern, too unyielding. I do not say he would be a bad king, but he would find precious little support among the lords who crave generosity and warmth. Renly paused, chewing the inside of his cheek. Some might say I would make a better king, but let us not pretend I have the better claim. The law is the law. Ned nodded slowly, hearing the subtext. There had long been whispers that Renly might make a bid himself, though it was a more brazen approach that might fracture the realm further. Do you mean to support Stannis, then? Renly exhaled, looking suddenly very tired. I would if he were here, but he remains at Dragonstone, apparently. Some claim he left the capital weeks ago when Robert was first wounded, but that was the same day the Ravens took flight with news of the king's accident. I do not know if he's gathering ships or awaiting a better moment to show himself. One rumor says Stannis discovered something about Joffrey's parentage and left in disgust, anticipating a coup. If that's the case, he might be raising his banners even now. But we do not know. The realm is blind as to his next move. Ned stepped closer, lowering his voice. Lord Renly, you command the city watch. Will they support me as regent if I deny Joffrey's coronation in the morning? A flicker of doubt crossed Renly's face. Some would. But how many? Many of the watchmen are men Baelish bought. Some are men the queen's father placed here. Some might want to keep the peace if bloodshed seems imminent. I don't have a certain count, and that's dangerous. If it comes to open steel in the throne room, we risk turning King's Landing into a battlefield. Ned clenched his jaw. A battlefield in the very heart of the city with the realm's leadership in the crossfire. Gods forbid. Renly pressed his palms on the table where a map of the Crownlands lay pinned by a paperweight. This is what I propose. We let the coronation proceed in name, but we refuse to sign any official recognition until a Grand Council is called. That council would require the presence of all major lords, possibly even the High Septon, to verify Joffrey's lineage. That would buy time for us to gather more proof. If we simply block the coronation tomorrow, the queen will shriek that we conspire to usurp her son. The gold cloaks might turn on us and we'd be hunted down as traitors before noon. Ned frowned, not liking it but seeing the sense. Very well. We appear. We do not kneel, we do not proclaim him as king. We simply stand on the sidelines and insist the matter awaits the Grand Council. If that incites her wrath, so be it. But at least we won't be raising swords in the throne room. A hint of relief softened Renly's features. Yes, that is one path. Another path, less peaceful, might be to muster all your men and some of mine, seize the queen and Joffrey, and hold them hostage until the lords can decide. But that would be an act of war. If it fails, we are all dead. Ned did not hesitate. I will not hold children hostage. And I won't begin my regency by drowning the throne room in blood, especially not with thousands of innocents in the city who would suffer the aftermath. It goes against every principle I hold dear. Renly managed a small smile. You are who Robert believed you to be, Ned. I pray your honor will see us through. He straightened. I will be with you in the morning to the extent I can. But remain vigilant. Cersei is no fool. They spoke a while longer, going over details. Renly would quietly post loyal watchmen around the Great Hall's entrances to discourage any sudden attacks. Ned would bring a contingent of Stark men, though lightly armed, to protect Sansa and Arya if things went awry. When their plans were laid as best as they could be, Ned departed. Outside Renly's chamber, the corridor was nearly deserted. One guard dozed on a bench, a candle guttering by his side. The flicker of its flame made the shadows loom, dancing along the walls like silent wraiths. Ned tried to sleep that night, but fitful dreams haunted him. He dreamt of a dire wolf pacing the Red Keep's corridors, howling in the dead hush, searching for something it could not find. He dreamt of Robert, caked in blood, pinned by a monstrous boar, reaching out to Ned in desperation. He dreamt of the crypts of Winterfell where the stone statues of his ancestors turned their heads to watch him pass with judging eyes. When dawn's first pale glow crept through the shutters, Ned rose from bed feeling as though he had not rested at all. He dressed simply in stark gray and a doublet pinned with the hands badge. Sansa and Arya were already awake, anxious. Sansa pestered him with questions about the coronation, wanting to know if she would sit with the other ladies at the front. Arya, on the other hand, glowered, suspecting everything was about to go wrong. Ned gently told them both to stay close to Septa Mordane during the ceremony and not to leave the keep under any circumstances. The girls sensed his gravity, and Sansa fell into a subdued hush while Arya's lips pressed into a firm line. Ned left them with a heartfelt embrace, praying they would remain safe if the day turned ugly. When at last he made his way to the Great Hall, the space was already crowded. A dais had been erected before the Iron Throne, draped in crimson and gold hangings. Lannister guards stood at key positions, their lion sigils prominent. Dozens upon dozens of lords, ladies, and knights milled about waiting. The sense of pageantry was thick. The highborn wore their finest clothes, swirling silks and elaborate headdresses. Trumpeters stood ready near the entrance. The hush of excitement felt almost like the prelude to some grand festival, but Ned felt no joy in it. The Iron Throne loomed behind everything, a twisted monstrosity of black steel swords hammered together in ancient times, reminding all who saw it that power never came without blood. He spotted Queen Cersei near the dais, dressed in mourning black trimmed with gold thread, a silver circlet in her hair. Joffrey stood at her side, clad in rich fabrics embroidered with the Baratheon stag intertwined with a golden lion. At 14, he was tall for his age but still with a boyish face. The arrogance in his gaze, however, was unmistakable. Myrcella and Tommen were present, as was the Kingsguard, white-cloaked knights forming a line behind the dais. Jaime Lannister was not among them, still absent or in the field somewhere, Ned did not know. Ser Barristan Selmy stood out like a sentinel, expression stern, but his posture tense. Ned drew a bit of calm from the presence of Barristan the Bold. The man was a knight of unimpeachable honor. Renly Baratheon entered soon after Ned, wearing deep green robes with the golden stag emblazoned. They exchanged a sober look. The queen's eyes flicked to them, the faintest sneer curling her painted lips. The hum of the crowd gathered grew louder. Moments later, Grand Maester Pycelle tottered in, followed by a handful of lesser courtiers. Even Varys appeared, looking subdued in modest gray robes that matched his usual unassuming style. All the chess pieces were assembled. A fanfare of trumpets blared, echoing through the vaulted ceiling. The herald stepped forth and proclaimed, in a strong, clear voice, "Behold, on this day, by the will of the gods and the blood of House Baratheon, we gather to crown his grace, Joffrey of the houses Baratheon and Lannister, rightful king of the Undulls and the First Men, lord of the Seven Kingdoms, protector of the realm." An expectant hush. Ned remained near Renly, arms crossed. He did not kneel, nor did Renly. Several lords around them seemed uncertain, casting furtive glances in their direction. Cersei gave no outward sign of noticing the lack of obeisance, but Ned saw her stiffen at the shoulders. Pycelle stepped forward with a crown, Robert's old circlet of steel and rubies, beaten into shape many years ago after Robert's rebellion. Pycelle's hands shook as he raised it. Cersei signaled for silence with a delicate motion. Then, with excessive ceremony, Pycelle placed the crown upon Joffrey's head. "I proclaim you Joffrey Baratheon, king," Pycelle quavered. "May the gods guide your rule in wisdom and strength." Joffrey's lips curved in a smug smile. He stepped up to the dais, turning to face the crowd. "I am your king," he declared, loud enough for all to hear. "And on this day, let all men swear fealty. We shall preserve my father's realm and bring justice to those who conspire against it." He paused, glancing out at the assembled throng. His gaze fell on Ned Stark and Renly Baratheon, who still had not knelt or moved. A flicker of annoyance crossed Joffrey's face. "Lord Stark," the boy called, "my mother says you are regent by my father's decree, but that you serve at the pleasure of the crown. Do you deny me your loyalty now that I am king?" All eyes turned to Ned. He forced calm into his posture and voice. "I serve the realm. If you are truly the lawful king, I shall do my duty." He let the words hang, avoiding the direct, "Your Grace." That was enough for the entire hall to feel the tension crackle. A low murmur spread as heads swiveled, looking to Cersei. She took 2 steps forward, her face a model of poised displeasure. "Lord Stark implies the matter of your parentage is in question, my son. But that is a cruel falsehood. You are Robert's heir, born of our marriage. The realm has no reason to doubt it. Surely, Lord Stark does not mean to cast slander upon you at your very coronation." Ned felt Renly's subtle nudge, cautioning him. He had promised not to light a spark that would send swords clashing. So he steadied himself. "My lady queen, I say only that many lords believe we should convene a grand council to affirm all lines of succession as was done in the days of old." It would bring the realm peace of mind in these troubled times. Cersei's green eyes flashed. A grand council to question my son's legitimacy? That is no more than a thinly veiled attempt to subvert the rightful throne. I will hear no such talk. Nor I, Joffrey snapped. I am king. If there are traitors who question that, let them speak so we can take their heads. Another ripple of discomfort passed through the hall. Ned saw fear flicker in the eyes of some courtiers. Joffrey's temper was notorious. The new king looked as though he might say "Mo." But Cersei touched his arm gently, whispering something. He exhaled, regaining composure. Then Joffrey looked at Ned again, with that faint, cruel tilt to his lips. You will continue as Hand of the King for now, Lord Stark, as my father desired. But I warn you, do not conspire behind my back. I will not be as lenient as Robert was. Am I understood? Ned bowed his head just enough to avoid direct insult. Yes, your grace. That seemed to satisfy the boy. He turned back to the crowd, raising his arms in a gesture of triumph. The herald declared the coronation complete, and the lords gave a wary cheer, though many voices sounded half-hearted. As the hall relaxed, servants rushed forward with goblets of wine for a brief celebratory toast. Cersei maintained a regal mask, greeting lords who pressed forward to offer compliments. Joffrey endured their effusions with the bored vanity of a child who has been given too much attention for too long. Ned stepped back, breathing easier now that no swords had been drawn. Renly murmured quietly in his ear, "We've avoided bloodshed at least. But it may not buy us much time." Ned nodded, lips set in a grim line. "We must proceed carefully. The Lannisters will press their advantage. If Baelish's men remain in the city watch, or if Tywin marches from the west, the next crisis could be soon." Renly looked around with forced casualness, ensuring no one hovered too close. What of the rumor that Stannis is raising a fleet at Dragonstone? If he sails for King's Landing, that complicates matters further. Then we hope he finds reason to parley first rather than attack. Unless we can persuade him that some due process is in place to challenge Joffrey's claim, he might resort to force. They broke off as lords approached to offer stiff courtesies. Lord Rosby, stoop-shouldered and old, murmured something about unwavering loyalty to King Joffrey. Lord Slint, newly raised from the city watch, waddled over to vow that the gold cloaks stood ready to keep the peace. Ned listened with half an ear. Renly responded politely, but his fingers drummed restlessly on his belt, betraying his tension. In the midst of the throng, Ned caught a glimpse of Sansa and Arya standing with Septa Mordane. Sansa wore a pale blue gown, clearly torn between reverence for the new king, her one-time betrothed, and confusion over her father's stance. Arya looked positively mutinous. Ned gave them a small nod of reassurance, relieved they were safe. When the official ceremony ended, Joffrey strode out with his mother, the Kingsguard forming an honor guard around them. Servants scrambled in the wake of the new king, clearing a path through the press of courtiers. The dais was left behind like an empty stage after the lead players have departed, still draped in banners of gold and crimson. Conversations grew louder, speculation and gossip thick in the air. Some highborn drifted away to find refreshments or private corners. Others lingered, waiting for a chance to speak with Ned or Renly or Pycelle. Varys materialized quietly at Ned's elbow, his face grave. "A fine show, my lord. But I suspect the real performance is yet to come." Ned exhaled. "Have you any fresh tidings?" The eunuch dipped his head. "A small matter. Word is that Lord Baelish has become ill in his cell, refusing meals, so the jailer says." Ned frowned. "Is he ill or feigning?" "I cannot say, but it could be ploy or truth. The jailer claims Baelish complains of stomach pains and headaches, that he's grown pale. Some men sicken quickly in the dark. Others only pretend to garner sympathy or a transfer to better quarters. In any case, the queen might use it as a pretext to demand a physician's visit, which could lead to other demands." Ned recalled that the last time someone had gone to attend a prisoner, Oren the scribe, he ended up murdered under suspicious circumstances. "I will not risk letting Baelish slip from my grasp. I'll send a trusted man to verify his condition. If he's truly ill, we'll arrange a healer under guard. Otherwise, he stays put." Varys's gaze flicked away, scanning the hall. "Prudent. In another corner, I hear House Tyrell has sent an envoy, likely to gauge the new king. Mace Tyrell may keep his distance for now, but he's an ambitious man. If Joffrey rewards him properly, the Reach could align with the Lannisters, and that would give them an overwhelming advantage. The Tyrells are not soon to forget how Robert spurned their daughter. But times change. They'll blow with the strongest wind. It was all more pressure, more reminders that alliances would soon be forged or broken on the pivot of Joffrey's claim. Ned rubbed at his temples, feeling the stirrings of another headache. We must do what we can to prevent a mass coalition behind Joffrey. At the least, we can push for neutrality until the question of parentage is resolved. If the Tyrells declare for him openly, that might sway half the realm. Varys placed a hand delicately on Ned's arm, a gesture of caution. We still need decisive proof, my lord, or a bold move. At some point, you must either name Stannis as the rightful heir publicly, or produce undeniable evidence that Joffrey is not Robert's son. Half measures will not hold the realm in check for long. Ned met Varys's mild gaze. I know. I must consider how best to proceed. The knowledge that Jaime Lannister fathered Cersei's children is dangerous. If the realm sees it as truth, war might erupt at once. Yet if we keep silent, Joffrey cements his throne. I need a path that spares thousands of innocents from the sword. Varys withdrew his hand. We walk on a razor's edge then. My little birds will keep watching. Perhaps an opportunity will arise that allows us to reveal the truth without igniting a civil war all at once. Ned sighed. Do what you can. I must speak with Renly again, see if the City Watch has uncovered any new leads regarding the guard who murdered the scribe. That might at least implicate Baelish fully. Varys bowed and melted away into the swirl of courtiers. Ned scanned the hall, found Renly conferring with Ser Barristan and near a column. On his way there, a voice called out Lord Stark. He turned to find Pycelle fussing with the chain of office draped over his shoulders. The Grand Maester's gaze looked troubled. My Lord Hand, might we speak? Ned suppressed a flare of impatience. Briefly, the day is already long. Yes, of course. Pycelle glanced about as though afraid of being overheard. My concern is for the king, this boy king, Joffrey. He is young, emotional. I fear he might act rashly. I have advised the queen to show caution, but I doubt my words hold much sway. You, as regent, well, do you think you can keep him from excesses? Excesses, Ned thought wryly, was a polite way of saying cruelty. Joffrey enjoyed tormenting others, the entire city had begun to suspect. I will do what I can, Ned said quietly. But if the queen insulates him from opposing counsel... Pycelle's throat bobbed. Yes, precisely my fear. The realm has endured boy kings before, but rarely one so headstrong. If I may be of any help, though I am but an old man, you have but to ask. Ned regarded Pycelle warily. The Grand Maester had shown himself to be a Lannister sympathizer in the past, or at least, he seemed to report everything to the queen. But fear etched the old man's face, so perhaps he was truly concerned. I appreciate your offer, Ned replied. Pray for the realm, Grand Maester. Times grow dark. He excused himself and at last reached Renly, who stood with Ser Barristan. The old knight wore the pristine white cloak of the King's Guard as though it weighed 1,000 pounds. He greeted Ned with a courteous bow. My Lord Hand. Ser Barristan. Any trouble from the Lannister guards? Barristan shook his head. They are watchful but not openly hostile. Today at least, they want no bloodshed in front of the entire court. Renly gestured to a cluster of gold cloaks near the entrance. Those are men I trust. We've been rotating them in. But we cannot do it too quickly, or the queen will notice. In time, we'll purge those who took Baelish's coin or who are sworn to the Lannisters. Ned gave him a thoughtful nod. A slow process. Keep at it. And what news of the man who slew our scribe? Renly scowled. Disappeared. We only caught a glimpse of him before the fiasco ended. The culprit was killed on the spot by my men, but who gave him the order remains unclear. He was not on any official roster. It seems he wore a City Watch tabard but might have been a sellsword. If so, that link to Baelish is purely circumstantial. We have no direct proof. The Queen's lawyers or the realm's many doubters will say we staged the entire incident. Ned's got twisted. So Baelish wriggles free again in essence. We cannot let him slip away physically. Ser Barristan cleared his throat. Forgive me, my lord, but might I speak freely? At Ned's nod, the knight continued, voice low. Baelish's presence in the dungeons is a risk. If the queen demands his release or his custody transferred to the Lannister cells, it could spark a confrontation. The new king might take that as a test of your loyalty. Ned's expression turned resolute. I'll not hand him over. If we do, Baelish will vanish or be quietly killed. If we keep him, though, the queen is forced to tread carefully. She might want him alive as a bargaining chip. Still, it's dangerous. Barristan inclined his head. I understand. I simply worry that war might break out with a single misstep. We do not have Robert's strong arm to keep the lords in check anymore. Renly cleared his throat. Let me handle the watch. Barristan, see if you can glean anything from the other Kingsguard, particularly Marintrant and Boros Blunt. They're not the brightest. Perhaps they know if the Queen has any plans regarding Baelish's custody. Barristan nodded solemnly. I shall try. Before Ned could speak further, Lord Giles Rosby and a handful of other courtiers approached with forced smiles, eager to congratulate the Hand of the King on how well the ceremony went. Ned forced himself to endure their chatter, mindful that politeness might keep them from picking sides against him. Politics felt like a never-ending swirl of suet, thick, cloying, and impossible to wash off. At last, the coronation festivities wound down. The great hall emptied. Cersei and Joffrey had departed to oversee some smaller event or perhaps to plan their next move. Ned withdrew to the Tower of the Hand with Renly, ignoring the curious stares of those who roamed the corridors. Inside the relative privacy of Ned's solar, they let out twin sighs. Then Ned sank into a chair. Today was only the beginning, he murmured. Renly poured a cup of watered wine and handed it to Ned, then poured one for himself. He took a quick swallow. A beginning, yes, but at least we ended it with no swords drawn. We must be grateful for small mercies, Ned said. Yet now that Joffrey is crowned, letters will fly across the realm. The Lannisters will demand fealty from every house. How many will bend the knee if it means avoiding war? Renly's lips thinned. Likely too many. The cost of war is high. No one wants to risk it unless they see a clear benefit. If Tywin bribes or threatens half the lords, we'll be outnumbered. Ned felt an old ache in his chest. He'd known the cost of war during Robert's rebellion, thousands dead, families sundered, entire towns razed. He did not want to see that happen again. But if the realm accepted an illegitimate king on the Iron Throne, what then? Ned thought of the Targaryen heirs once declared pretenders, of how the realm had once been forced to unify behind Robert's claim because of the madness of Aerys. Now the madness might come from a boy king's cruelty, fostered by a cunning mother. We must proceed carefully, he said, more to himself than to Renly. There may be a way to unite enough houses behind the truth if we prove it. They won't relish war, but some will prefer it to bowing to an abomination. Renly drummed his fingers. I'd start with the Riverlands. Your wife's kin. The Tullus might be swayed if you convince them. Jon Arryn was investigating Joffrey's parentage before he died, or so the rumor goes. House Arryn might side with us too if Lady Lysa can be reasoned with, though she's grown reclusive in the Eyrie. Ned grimaced, remembering that Lysa Arryn had refused to return to King's Landing after her husband's suspicious death. She had fled, shutting herself away with her son, the young Lord of the Vale. Reasoning with Lysa is not so simple, and I cannot easily leave the city to treat with her. He paused. However, perhaps I can send word north to Catelyn or to my son Robb in Winterfell. If we muster some sort of evidence, we might petition them to gather allies quietly. The north is large, but it's far away. That also means Tywin might move quicker than we can. They talked until well after sunset, forging half plans, discarding others, uncertain how best to proceed. More than once, Ned found himself staring at the door, half expecting an urgent summons or an armed band of Lannister men come to arrest him for treason. But the halls remained silent and the night wore on. At last, Renly excused himself to tend to a matter with the city watch, and Ned was left alone with his thoughts. He told Jory Castle to double the guards around the Tower of the Hand. Then he sent a trusted servant, Tomard, to check on Peter Baelish's condition in the dungeons, accompanied by two of Ned's best men. If Baelish was feigning illness, they would see it. If not, perhaps the maesters could be consulted under watchful eyes. Ned refused to let even the faintest chance of an accident that ended in Baelish's convenient death. In the dim hours, Ned composed a letter to Catelyn detailing the latest events with careful words. He included references to the burden left by Robert's final breath and how the realm may not share the joy that certain claimants suppose. Writing thus in code, he hoped Catelyn or Maester Luwin at Winterfell would glean the meaning, that Joffrey's claim was false, that the North should prepare for trouble. Sealing the letter with wax, he prayed the raven would not be intercepted. The Lannisters had eyes everywhere. He was just finishing when Tomard returned. The man had a tight expression. Baelish is on a pallet in his cell, my lord. Looks pale, complaining of stomach cramps. Some might say it's real, but he perked up quick when I arrived, said it's the gloom and the poor food making him ill. I didn't see any sign of poison or foul play. The jailer says he's refused to eat. He's only sipped water. Ned nodded slowly. Likely a ploy for attention. Or a chance to be moved somewhere less guarded. Let him lie in the dark if that's what he chooses. So long as he's well enough to stand trial when the time comes. Tomard bowed. Aye, my lord. If he worsens, do I fetch a maester? Ned considered. Send for Maester Priss if it truly seems dire. Not Pycelle. I don't want the Grand Maester meddling. Understood. Yes, my lord. When Tomard left, Ned remained at his desk, swirling the last bit of wine in his cup. He stared down at the candle flame, feeling the weight of all these precarious decisions. If Baelish truly fell gravely ill, that might solve one problem, yet it left so many others. He could almost hear Robert's ghostly voice, complaining about the demands of the throne, how complicated it all was, how easily one could drown in the floods of politics. Ned understood that more acutely now than ever before. It was not the swords that kept a man awake here, it was the whisper of betrayals in the dark. Sleep came only in snatches, and the following days blurred together in a tense dance. Joffrey held court sessions where he sat on the Iron Throne, scowling and issuing petty commands. Cersei hovered behind him, offering subtle guidance or shutting down any lord who dared question the new king's authority. Renly tried to maintain discipline in the City Watch, continuing to replace questionable men with fresh hires from loyal families, but the process was agonizingly slow. Every day, new ravens arrived with letters from across the Seven Kingdoms. Some lords pledged fealty to King Joffrey with overblown praise, seeking favor. Others sent more cautious replies, praising the memory of Robert and promising only that they would pray for stability. A few letters from the north or the Riverlands reached Ned privately, expressing worry and wanting to know if the rumors of Joffrey's questionable parentage were true. Ned answered them carefully, urging caution, promising more clarity soon. He continued to hope that a grand council might be convened or that Stannis would arrive with a legal challenge. So far, no sign of Stannis, and that too made Ned uneasy. A silent Stannis was a scheming Stannis, or so Renly had warned. Meanwhile, Baelish remained in his cell, apparently neither improving nor deteriorating. Word spread among the courtiers that the Master of Coin was a tragic victim of slander, that he was unjustly incarcerated by a paranoid northern lord. When Ned confronted these whispers, he found that many believed Littlefinger's sly reputation might stem from envy and rumor, rather than real betrayal. They did not know of the partial letters that Varys had collected or the dead scribe whose testimony had vanished with his last breath. Without living proof, Baelish's schemes became intangible in the minds of the realm's gentry. A cunning liar, forcibly silenced, often reaps the benefits of doubt. On the 6th day after Joffrey's coronation, an unexpected shift occurred. Late afternoon sunlight slanted through the windows of the throne room, dust motes swirling in the golden haze. Ned stood with Renly near the dais, having just endured another tedious court session, listening to Joffrey's petulant pronouncements. Suddenly, a herald approached the dais with haste, announcing the arrival of a rider from the Rosby Road. "He comes bearing urgent tidings, your grace," the herald declared. Joffrey, slouching on the Iron Throne, yawned. "Bring him forward, then. Quickly." A dusty rider, clad in travel-stained leathers, stumbled in and knelt. He looked terrified. "Your Grace. Forgive me. I have news, urgent news from the east. Lord Stannis Baratheon is assembling a fleet off Dragonstone. He sent ravens proclaiming himself the rightful king by virtue of being your father's true heir." The man's words faltered under Joffrey's growing scowl. "He says your claim is false. That your father is." Joffrey shot to his feet, face flaming red with rage. "Shut your mouth," he shouted. His voice echoed through the hall. "You come into my court to spread lies? Perhaps you want your tongue cut out. Where's the so-called fleet? How many ships?" The rider trembled, licking his lips. "Lord Stannis has, they say, near 50 war galleys, and more gather by the day. He has supporters in the Stormlands, your grace. They rally to him, believing him the rightful Baratheon king. He calls himself Stannis of House Baratheon, the first of his name." A hush fell. Ned felt a surge of mingled relief and apprehension. So Stannis was finally moving. The queen, standing next to Joffrey, looked pale with suppressed fury. "Stannis is a traitor," she said icily. "He was always jealous of your father's throne, my son." Joffrey's fists clenched on the arms of the throne. "He dares to call me false? I'll have his head. I'll have every man who supports him flayed alive." He glared around the hall. "Who here dares stand with him? Answer, or I'll..." Cersei placed a hand on Joffrey's shoulder. "Calm yourself, my son. We will deal with Stannis soon enough." She turned her gaze to the trembling messenger. "Speak no more of this. Go see the Master of Horse. He will find you lodging. We shall consult the council immediately." Ned watched as the messenger was hastily ushered out. The entire throne room tense as a drawn bowstring. Stannis had thrown a gauntlet, claiming the throne outright. That put enormous pressure on Joffrey's rule. especially if the rumors of his illegitimacy began to spread more widely. The Stormlands might soon tear themselves apart, with some lords declaring for Stannis, others for Joffrey. Ned exchanged a glance with Renly, who looked troubled. Renly was also from the Stormlands, after all, but had parted ways with his brother long ago. This was going to escalate fast. Cersei addressed the throng in a clear, commanding tone. The court is dismissed until further notice. The king will confer with the Hand and the council. We shall act decisively against this rebellion. She looked to Ned with that smooth, poised mask she wore so well. Lord Stark, with me, if you please. There was no refusing a royal summons in public. Ned nodded and followed her out, aware of Joffrey stalking ahead, 2 Kingsguard in tow. Renly fell in step beside Ned, his jaw set. They made their way to the council chamber adjacent to the throne room. Inside, Pycelle was already there, wringing his hands. Varys slipped in seconds later, bowing to the new king. Ser Barristan also joined them, silent and stoic. Cersei waited until the doors were shut. Then she faced the group. We have a rebellion on our hands. Stannis dares to name himself king, spouting vile rumors about my children's parentage. This will not stand. Joffrey, perched restlessly at the head of the table, glared at each counselor in turn. We must crush him at once. Summon my grandfather, he has the largest army in the realm. We'll march to Dragonstone if we must, burn his ships to ashes. Pycelle made a quailing sound. Your Grace, sending an army to Dragonstone is not so simple. We would need a fleet of our own to land men on that island. And if we withdraw too many men from the capital, we risk leaving ourselves vulnerable. Then let it be done, Joffrey said petulantly. We have ships, the royal fleet. Cersei's lips tightened. Only a dozen war galleys remain in King's Landing, Joffrey. The rest are scattered or in disrepair. Lord Stannis's fleet is already more numerous. Engaging him at sea is a risk. We'd need to call upon Lord Redwyne from the Arbor or House Valerion, if they're still loyal. But we cannot be certain. And your grandfather Tywin's forces are in the west, days of march away. We have gold, yes, but time is short. Meanwhile, if Stannis lands in the Stormlands, our shipping route might be threatened. We must plan carefully. Ned was silent, observing. He felt no sympathy for the Lannisters' predicament, but as regent, he was duty-bound to consider the realm's well-being. A major clash at sea or near the Stormlands could devastate entire coastlines. At last, he cleared his throat. Has Stannis demanded the city's surrender, or does he aim simply to claim the crown by right of birth? If there is a chance for negotiation, Joffrey scoffed. Negotiate? With a traitor calling me bastard? Never. I want him put to death. Are you questioning me, Stark? Ned kept his tone measured. I do not question your authority, your grace. I merely point out that the realm is large, and a war could spill blood in every corner. Innocent men, women, and children will suffer. A moment's parley might save thousands of lives. Joffrey's face twisted. You have always disliked me, Lord Stark. You stand there, claiming to serve me while you cast doubt on my birth. If you had any loyalty, you would not speak of parley. Stannis must yield or die. That is final. Cersei raised a hand. My son is correct. Lord Stark, you are regent, but do not forget the king's will. If you mean to keep the realm from war, that is admirable, but Stannis has no rightful claim. We must treat his declaration as open rebellion. Renly spoke up, voice tight. He does have a claim if we speak of conventional laws of inheritance. Stannis is Robert's younger brother. By law, if... Cersei whirled on him. If what? If Joffrey is not Robert's son? You dare repeat that slander? Renly held her gaze. I merely state the law, your grace. It was like a tinderbox in the chamber, each word a potential spark. Ned decided to shift the conversation. If we plan to defend the city, we should examine our resources. The gold cloaks number around 2,000. The city walls are strong, but a protracted siege would be disastrous if we lose control of the sea. Stannis has ships. He could block Blackwater Bay, starve us out. Pycelle nodded vigorously. We must gather more ships. The Lannisters have many bannermen in the west, but few are seamen. Perhaps the Redwynes, as the Queen said. The Tyrells also have a modest fleet, and they can cut off supplies from the Mander if they side with Stannis. We must ensure they do not. Joffrey slammed a hand on the table. Why are we hesitating? Command them to swear loyalty or be destroyed. Are we not the Iron Throne? Ned eyed the young king's fury. Ties of fealty are not commanded so lightly. Each house weighs its alliances. We must persuade them. Cersei's voice turned cold. If you cannot do what is necessary, Lord Stark, perhaps the king would be better served by another hand. One who understands that traitors only respond to force. A charged silence followed. Ned felt anger coil in his chest, but he kept it leashed. I have no wish to abandon my post. I serve the king's interest, but also the realm's. My counsel is to proceed with caution, gather allies with care, and avoid a rash, doomed attempt to crush Stannis at sea. As for labeling him a traitor, that is your prerogative, but do not expect the realm to follow blindly without question. Joffrey rose so abruptly his chair nearly toppled. You speak to me as though I were a child. I am the king. You will do as I say, or a... Cersei laid a calming hand on Joffrey's shoulder, murmuring something in his ear. The boy hissed in annoyance but grudgingly sat down. She turned to the council. We will call upon our bannermen, muster a strong host here in King's Landing. We will summon the royal fleet from wherever it lies, refit any ships we can, and see about hiring sails if necessary. Meanwhile, we will open negotiations with the Tyrells, the Redwynes, Valerion, and Celtigar to ensure they remain loyal. That is all. Is that not the prudent approach, Lord Stark? Ned inclined his head. Yes, that is prudent. We must also keep the city calm. Riots could break out if the people fear a siege. Cersei allowed herself a small, thin smile. Then we are agreed for once. It was an uneasy resolution, but no one dared press further. The meeting concluded shortly thereafter, though Joffrey stormed out, clearly still displeased with Ned's perceived insolence. Renly looked to Ned with exasperation, and Ned simply shook his head. Outside, the corridors bustled with urgent courtiers whispering of Stannis and war. The city had begun to stir with fresh rumors. Some said Stannis had proof of Joffrey's illegitimacy, that he would brand Cersei and Jaime as adulterers. Others claimed he had formed an alliance with a mysterious Red Priestess from across the sea. The details varied, but the gist was the same. Stannis Baratheon had staked his claim, and the realm would soon face a crisis of loyalties. In the Tower of the Hand, Ned tried to gather his scattered thoughts. A war on the horizon changed everything. If Stannis advanced, would the Tullus or Arryns join him? Would the North? If Ned remained at court, was he tacitly supporting Joffrey? Or could he claim neutrality while the question of parentage hung in the air? Each path seemed fraught with peril. He could feel the realm fracturing, just as Baelish had once planned. Perhaps the presence of Baelish was no longer even necessary. Enough seeds of discord had been sown. That evening, while Ned conferred with Renly in his solar, a messenger arrived from the city gates, announcing that a group of knights sworn to House Tyrell had arrived to speak with the king. Loras Tyrell was among them, the famed Knight of Flowers. Ned remembered that Loras had once admired Renly and the pair had been friendly. Perhaps that friendship might be a crucial link. But Loras demanded an audience with the king alone, and so, once again, Ned felt the stirrings of suspicion that the Tyrells might be forging a direct tie to Joffrey. If the queen offered Myrcella or Tommen in a betrothal to a highborn Tyrell, they might seal a new alliance, overshadowing any rumors that threatened Joffrey. So many pieces moved on the board. 2 days passed in a blur of audiences, negotiations, and silent threats. By the 10th day after Joffrey's coronation, the city was thick with armed men. Lannister guards patrolled openly. Many Stormland knights had slipped away, possibly heading to join Stannis. Word arrived that more of the royal fleet was gathering near the Blackwater, though the ships were old and in need of refitting. Joffrey grew more sullen with each passing day, and Cersei more vigilant. Renly confided in Ned that he felt unsafe, suspecting the queen might arrange a hunting accident for him. Ned advised him to keep to the Tower of the Hand or remain in the presence of loyal watchmen. Then, late one afternoon, Ned was summoned urgently to the dungeons. A breathless guard reported that Peter Baelish had collapsed in his cell. Fearing a ploy or a sudden attempt at rescue, Ned gathered Jory Castle and 5 good men, along with Maester Priss, and descended the torchlit steps into the black depths beneath the Red Keep. The dungeon smelled of stagnant water, sweat, and fear. Jailers shuffled aside at Ned's approach, murmuring about the prisoner's condition. They found Baelish sprawled on his pallet. He looked thinner, hair lank, his cheeks hollow. His face glistened with sweat. A single torch cast flickering light across the narrow space. Ned stepped cautiously, alert for any hidden trap. "Is he breathing?" he asked the jailer. The man grimaced. "Yes, but shallow. He's burning with fever." Baelish's eyes fluttered open, catching sight of Ned. A weak smile crept over his lips. "Lord Stark," he rasped. "Have you come to finish me off?" Ned motioned Maester Pris forward. The Maester knelt to check Baelish's pulse, shining a small lantern in the man's eyes. "He's quite hot, my lord. Likely an infection. Possibly from the water or some untreated cut." Baelish let out a harsh laugh that turned into a cough. "No, cut. Just your northern hospitality. I ate nothing but the water here, not fit for dogs." Ned frowned. "You refused proper food. I gave you that option. If you've made yourself ill—" "Oh, I have, yes," Baelish said with a grimace of pain. "But it's not merely that, I suspect. Did you wonder if someone might want me dead quietly so you'd never glean my secrets?" The suggestion roused Ned's anger. "I have no need to poison you, Baelish. I want you alive so we can see justice done for your plots." Baelish's eyes flicked around as if searching for watchers in the shadows. "Plots? Indeed. You still think me the greatest threat? There are bigger fish in this pond, Stark. I only sought a slice of the chaos. But it's out of my hands now. If I die, you lose the only chance you have of truly exposing them. That's what you want, yes? A scapegoat, or do you truly want the truth?" Ned turned to Maester Pris. "Can you treat him?" Pris nodded cautiously. "I will need to brew a feverfew tonic, perhaps something to settle his stomach. Clean water, rest, and fresh bandages if there's any sign of an abscess." Ned glanced at Baelish's wrists, which showed raw skin from shackles. "He'll remain chained, but see he's given what he needs. Station men you trust here, Jory." Jory inclined his head. "Of course, my lord." Before Ned could depart, Baelish mustered a final burst of energy. "Wait. Ned. A word, if you can bear it. Just you." Ned studied the man's fevered eyes. This could be a trick, but curiosity gnawed at him. After a moment, he gestured for Pris, Jory, and the others to move back a step. "Say what you must, but be quick." Baelish coughed, grimacing in pain. "You want to avoid war, yes? Maybe even dethrone Joffrey for the good of the realm. Then you need alliances, fresh ones. You can't rely on the Boy King or the Lannisters or even Stannis. He'll burn the city before he yields. So turn to the Tyrells. I can help. I have connections. Enough to tip the scales in your favor if you see me free." Ned's lips curled in disgust. "You bargain for release? Why should I trust you?" Baelish closed his eyes, sweat trickling down his temple. "Because I prefer living in a realm that's stable enough for coin to flow. If we plunge into a war with Stannis, everything I built, ashes. I can feed you names, accounts, letters from men at Highgarden, from certain key houses in the Reach. But not from this hole. I need to be free, or at least better quarters. I can't do anything like this." Ned shook his head sharply. "I have no reason to believe you. You might vanish the moment you're out." A faint chuckle. "Perhaps. But ask yourself, do you gain more from me dead in a cell or alive and scheming for your side? You can keep me guarded, but I won't be of any use if fever takes me." He coughed again, a wet sound. Ned felt torn. The man was a liar of the first order, but some part of Ned recognized that Baelish had indeed woven deep ties with bankers, merchants, and lords. His cunning might be turned to Ned's advantage if it could be controlled. "I will think on it," Ned said at length. "For now, you'll remain here until the Maester says you're strong enough to stand. Then we'll see." Baelish's eyes flickered. "Don't wait too long. The realm churns like a storm at sea. If you'd keep the ship from sinking, sometimes you need a cunning pilot." Ned walked away, leaving Baelish to cough softly. Outside in the corridor, Jory gave Ned a questioning look, but Ned only said he's desperate. Pay him no mind. Inside, though, Ned was thinking furiously. If a war with Stannis was coming and the Lannisters refused to yield any ground, perhaps an alliance with the Tyrells could help. But how to secure it without letting Baelish spin free? They ascended from the dungeons. Torch flames flickered against the damp stone. Ned's pulse hammered in his ears. Each decision loomed like a yawning pit. One misstep could send the realm tumbling into chaos. He clung to the hope that, as regent, he could still steer events toward a less bloody outcome. Yet each day, the swirl of intrigue grew deeper and more lords chose sides. Perhaps Baelish was right, the storm at sea was upon them. Whether Ned could keep the ship afloat remained to be seen. That night, he sat at a table piled with letters from across the 7 kingdoms, reading urgent pleas from Tully bannermen, cryptic notes from the Vale, cautious inquiries from the north. Every message demanded an answer: who was the rightful king? Would the north rise? Should they muster swords for or against Stannis? Ned dipped his quill in ink, struggling to form replies that would buy time without committing to Joffrey's cause. His only real ally at court was Renly, who also faced a crisis of loyalty. His own brother was now the declared rival to Joffrey. If it came to open conflict, how many Storm Lords would scorn Renly for not supporting Stannis? Amid these thoughts, Varys appeared, gliding in unannounced. "So late at work, my lord," the eunuch remarked. "You toil like a man weaving a tapestry with threads he does not quite trust." Ned waved him in. "You have news." Varys pressed his fingertips together. "I do. Word has come that Lord Tywin is on the move. He's called his banners in the west. The rumor is that he's marching for Harrenhal, perhaps to anchor a threat against the Riverlands. If House Tully sides with Stannis, Tywin means to strike fast. With the Lannister host so near, the Riverlords might think twice about throwing in with a Baratheon. And if the Tullys remain neutral, that leaves the path open for Tywin to swing south or even east, forcing the Vale to isolate itself. In short, the puzzle thickens. Ned's heart sank further. Tywin Lannister was no man to be trifled with. He was as ruthless as he was wealthy. So Cersei brings war from both ends, Stannis from the sea, Tywin from the Riverlands. The realm is being squeezed. We stand at the center with a boy king who thirsts for blood. Baelish rots in a cell, Stannis musters ships, the Tyrells whisper behind closed doors. He set down his quill, massaging his temples. What course do we have but to hope for a Grand Council? Varys's face was unreadable. A Grand Council requires the majority of great houses to attend, or it loses legitimacy. Do you think the Lannisters, flush with power, will permit that? Do you think Stannis, self-righteous as he is, will wait while they debate? Ned's weariness grew heavier. "I do not know, Varys." Silence stretched, broken only by the crackle of candles. Outside, the wind stirred. At length, Varys spoke softly. "It seems we must rely on smaller steps. Each day you keep the city from erupting is a victory. Each day you prevent Joffrey from ordering a rash assault is another. Perhaps in the lull, the truth about his parentage might reach enough ears, or Stannis might propose terms that don't involve the city's downfall." Ned found little comfort in that. But he nodded. "Thank you, Lord Varys. If you hear any rumor of a shift in the Tyrells' stance, let me know at once. I suspect that's where the next pivot lies." The eunuch bowed and slipped away, leaving Ned to contemplate the fragile peace a while longer. He thought of Sansa and Arya, longing for them to be safe in Winterfell. He thought of the realm's thousands upon thousands of small folk who had no say in who claimed the throne but who would bear the brunt of any war. He thought, too, of the moment Baelish had been arrested, a moment that should have eliminated one source of treachery but had only delayed the storm instead of dispersing it. Peace felt more elusive than ever. Still, Ned Stark was not a man to forsake hope nor to abandon duty. In the flickering light of the candles, he gathered up another sheaf of parchment, drafting letters that might strengthen alliances. He wrote to Edmure Tully, to Roose Bolton in the north, to various lesser lords who might be convinced to keep faith with House Stark and the old lines of succession. He implored them all for caution, for unity, to refrain from taking up arms until the truth was certain. If the realm had any chance, it lay in men of principle refusing to be herded like cattle into the flames. Eventually, in the darkest hours, Ned set down his pen. Outside the window, King's Landing slumbered fitfully as if anticipating a rude awakening. Ned stood and looked across the rooftops, letting the night's chill air brush his face. Far off, the moonlight shone on Blackwater Bay, where soon the sails of war might appear. Stannis' sails, or Sel sails, or maybe the ragged remnants of the royal fleet. The horizon held no answers, only possibilities. The next dawn would bring more tidings, more decisions, each shaped by the same question: which king truly wore the crown? He whispered a prayer to the old gods, half expecting no one to hear. Then he turned away, heading to his bed. Why? Take a heavy heart. Yet he refused to be swallowed by despair. Honor still guided him. His father's honor, the North's unwavering sense of right, and the promise he had made to Robert to protect the realm. War might be looming, but as long as he could still stand, Ned Stark would fight to spare the realm from the worst of it. Even if that meant forging uneasy alliances, outmaneuvering the cunning queen, and keeping Baelish alive as a reluctant tool. Winter was coming, but he would not let the realm freeze in darkness without doing all in his power to hold back the storm. Sleep, fitful as ever, claimed him. And so another night passed in King's Landing. with the realm poised at the edge of a knife, uncertain which way it would fall, uncertain whose crown would ultimately grace the Iron Throne. And in that hush between one day and the next, the shadows of war lengthened, waiting to be unleashed.